Chapter 1195. The special arrow in Chu Feng's hand sank into the lower half of Hong Xing's body. At a speed visible to the naked eye, this half of his body rapidly disintegrated and melted into dirty blood. "Save my body!" Hong Xing roared. If it was in the lesser Yin realm, even if a secondary saint lost a part of his body, he could still reconstruct it. However, in the world of the living where the laws were complete, he was greatly suppressed. At present, it was impossible for him to have such a method. There were all kinds of great medicines in the world that could also help him recover, but the price was very high. Therefore, when he saw Chu Feng destroy his body, he immediately became anxious. This was related to his future Tao fruit. Once it was delayed, it would damage his Tao body and his future achievements would be damaged. At the critical moment, the old man who was blocking the upper half of his body made a move. With a slash, he quickly chopped off the dissolving part of his body. However, at this moment, only half of his legs were left, only slightly above his knees. Everyone was speechless. Many people looked over and deeply felt Chao Da's savagery. This was a devil. Once he made a move, it was called neat. "Chao Da, you and I are irreconcilable," Hong Xing roared angrily, his eyes spewing fire. Then, his eyes were bloodshot with resentment and killing intent. He hated the youth in front of him to the core. In today's battle, he had suffered too much damage and the price was too great. He cultivated a famous Tao body, but in the end, the lower half of his body was only left with a pair of legs. How could he connect them and recover? "Do you think you can still live under the same sky as me? I will kill you sooner or later." Chu Feng's response was unyielding beyond everyone's imagination. He was not afraid at all. Holding the big stick, he wanted to rush over and smash Hong Xing's head. If not for the old man's protection, he would have definitely taken action. At this moment, Hong Yunhai finally approached, but with the old servant by his side to keep him in check, he could not make a move on Chu Feng. His face was as gloomy as water. This was his own grandson, but in the end, he was beaten up so miserably. This made him extremely angry. If not for the presence of the Divine King, he would have crippled Chu Feng with a slap and then slowly refined his soul. At this time, the few elders present did not say anything. Instead, an intense shout came from behind them. A young man rushed over. His body was strong and vigorous, and he had an imposing appearance. It was Hong Yu. The Hong family wanted to use him to replace Chao Da and put him on the list along with Six-Eared Macaque and the others. "Seniors, all of you must uphold justice for my older brother. This Chao Da is lawless, wicked beyond redemption, and deranged to the point of making one's hair stand on end. He actually acted so viciously against my older brother, suddenly launching a sneak attack, causing him to fall to such a state and be in such a miserable state. How malicious is this? He actually acted against his own people? Under normal circumstances, how could a single Chao Da be a match for my elder brother? I don't think he would dare." Hong Yu berated, his face full of anger and killing intent. He requested the quasi-divine kings to immediately kill Chao Da, denounce him in both word and writing, listing all types of crimes. At this moment, the entire battlefield quietened down. Both sides stopped fighting and stared at this place. No matter what, Chao Da's name had shaken the entire region. Noisy. "Shut up." Chu Feng only said these 4 words and ignored him. Instead, he looked at the few elders. He was really suppressing a wave of anger in his heart. He had almost been killed by someone, and now the old and the young were forcing him to abdicate. Instead, they accused him of murdering someone behind the scenes, putting the blame on him. "What's going on?" an elder asked. "Hong Xing incited the white porcupine to perish together with me. In addition, he secretly shot an arrow. Look at what this is, the sky demon blood-melting arrow. If I hadn't dodged in time, I would have died a violent death." Chu Feng was quite direct. He narrated what had happened and pointed out that Hong Xing had attacked him behind the scenes on the battlefield. He had used a vicious forbidden arrow to kill him in the chaos. Nonsense. This is clearly an arrow that you carried with you. You maliciously injured someone, and you still dare to put the blame on me? Hong Yu shouted. Chu Feng cast a sidelong glance at him. This handsome youth who was at the same golden arhat level as him was really shameless. It seemed like he had planned to kill him in advance by framing him like this. Chu Feng was a little puzzled. He had just come to the battlefield and had no grudges with them. Why did he attract killing intent? Seniors, I suggest that we search his soul light immediately. There's most likely a big problem with this person. Let's restrain him first. Hong Yu shouted. In the field of evolution, if there was a problem with one's soul light, the effects would be severe. One could easily be crippled. Hong Yu definitely had bad intentions. If there was a slight accident during the soul search, Chu Feng might be left with soul injuries. His achievements in this life would be limited. Chu Feng shot him a glance and said, You're hiding at the back of the battlefield. You seem to be able to see everything clearly and know everything from so far away. Don't say that I'm guilty, you won't be able to escape either. He was very calm and composed. With the old servant of the 6 years race here, there shouldn't be any changes at this moment. Chu Feng spoke again. He pointed at the sky and said, There's a heavenly mirror monitoring up there. No matter how secretive the quasi-saint who wants to kill me is, we can still find some clues if we transfer the images left behind in the mirror. Besides, this arrow is right here. No matter how he tries to conceal it, I think we should be able to leave behind a wisp of his aura. Divine King, please investigate it. If it really doesn't work, we can ask the Celestial Venerable to return to his origin and thoroughly investigate the truth. He was very calm and had a look of true gold that feared no fire. At this time, the 6-eared macaque, Peng Wanli and Xiao Yao also walked over. Don't let the people from the other camp laugh at us. An old man spoke, indicating that this was a battlefield and it was best to settle it after returning to the camp. At the same time, he also felt that Chu Feng was very calm and composed. He reckoned that he had something to rely on and wasn't lying. It was really possible that something had happened to Hong Xing. Moreover, he had a certain friendship with Hong Yunhai and felt that he could help him appropriately. At the very least, he could turn a big problem into a small one and let this matter pass. Yes, let's go back. Someone else said. Chu Feng said, Seniors, the evidence is here. I really can't bear it. I'm fighting on the front lines and someone is shooting arrows at me from behind. If we don't give me an explanation and continue to suppress it like this, it will make people's hearts go cold. Don't worry. When the truth comes to light, we will give you an explanation. An old man nodded solemnly. The old servant of the 6-eared macaque race also said, Let's go back first. If this matter was really investigated thoroughly, the effects would be extremely bad. They couldn't expose it in front of everyone like this, otherwise, it would make many people's hearts go cold. At this time, Hong Yunhai's heart was cold. He knew that he was in big trouble. Why hadn't the heavenly demon blood-melting arrow exploded? According to his design, once this arrow was shot, it would eventually disintegrate without leaving a trace. In reality, it was not easy to tamper with a forbidden weapon. The fire was difficult to control and the arrow was perfectly preserved. At that time, when the white hedgehog self-destructed, everyone would think that Chowda had been dragged along with it. No one would think too much about it. However, the result made Hong Yunhai's heart tremble. Chowda didn't die and was unharmed. Moreover, he appeared here with the heavenly demon blood-melting arrow. Let's go. The battlefield calmed down and the people of both camps retreated. In the Golden Body Cultivators camp, the expressions of a few elders weren't very good. All sorts of signs indicated that this was a premeditated assassination. Hong Xing wanted to kill Chowda. Old Hong, your grandson has gone too far. He really didn't do this well, someone said. Hong Yunhai's expression was as gloomy as water. At this time, he couldn't flare up because he couldn't act unreasonable in front of someone of the same level. If he caused trouble without reason, his grandson would be even more unlucky. This little bastard has gone mad. I don't care. You guys punish him severely, but I hope you can spare his life, he said. This could also be considered retreating in order to advance. He wanted to do things according to the law. As long as Hong Sheng was given a chance to live, he could punish him however he wanted. Someone said, "The impact is indeed very bad. Although Chao De wasn't killed or injured, we can't not punish him. Let him serve on the battlefield for more than 10 years. It sounded like the punishment was very light, but Hong Yunhai's expression changed. Fighting on the battlefield for 10 years, who knew what would happen? He might die here. Now Hong Sheng was free. He came here to train himself and could leave at any time. That's too long. 5 years, someone else said. Forget it. Young people can make mistakes. 3 years, give him a chance to change. If it's too long, he most likely won't be able to leave this battlefield. The last person who spoke had a good relationship with Hong Yunhai, so he could be considered to be helping to plead for leniency. You guys discuss it. The old servant of the six-eared macaque race stood up and walked out of the tent. He didn't express his opinion and didn't continue to participate. At this time, the monkey, Peng Wanli, and Xiao Yao were surrounding Chu Feng. They were quite impressed by his strength. As expected of someone from the degeneration, so savage. The monkey sighed. I just don't understand. Why do they want to kill me? Chu Feng was still pondering over this matter. Otherwise, he would feel uneasy. He really didn't understand why he was targeted for no reason. The six-eared macaque, Peng Wanli, and Xiao Yao looked at each other thoughtfully as if they had thought of something. Could it be that Hong Yu wants to join us and get a share of the spoils? It's possible. There were many times when he took the initiative and tried his best to show off in front of us. Not long after, the three of them guessed the truth and restored the Hong family's motive. How vicious. They want to kill Chao De directly. Hong Yu isn't mature enough. He isn't strong enough, so why should he join us? Does he think that we will be on the list no matter if we win or lose? Does he want to follow us and get on the same list? Wishful thinking. He has quite the ambition, but I'm afraid his life isn't that tough. The monkey and the others laughed coldly. They were furious that their secrets had been seen through and knew what they were going to do next. Xiao Yao said, "This won't do. We have to hurry and warn old Lin and the others. Otherwise, if the news is leaked, how can we do anything? They will definitely be on guard, and we won't be able to find them." The monkey panicked. He quickly found the old servant and told him to warn the Hong family in the name of the six-eared macaque race. They better watch their mouths, or else they would have to bear the consequences. The six-eared macaque race was one of the few strong races in the Yang realm. The Hong family definitely didn't dare to offend them. If they angered the monkey race, it wouldn't be a problem for them to wipe out their entire race. Chu Feng said, "I want to know how to punish that Hong Sheng. I'm waiting for an explanation." You have to be mentally prepared. This kind of scandal usually won't be made public. Moreover, the Hong family's connections aren't bad. If someone speaks up for them, they will probably punish that Hong Sheng to stay on the battlefield for 3 to 5 years. It's impossible for them to take his head as an apology. The monkey sighed. This was the news he had learned from the old servant. Chu Feng was instantly indignant. He felt that this place was very dark. He had been ambushed and almost lost his life, but it was just like that. It really made him unhappy. Don't be rash. You have to be calm. Didn't you say that you have to be calm every time something big happens? When the results of their punishment are out, we will help you vent your anger. The Hong family has done such a thing. If we go and settle the score with them, no one will say anything. That's right. Chao, ancestor, Don't cause trouble for now. Calm down and focus. Wait a few days. The monkey, Peng Wanli, and the others pulled back Chu Feng together. They said all kinds of good things and promised to help him vent his anger. All right, I'll wait. As expected, 3 days later, it was announced that Hong Xing would stay on the battlefield for 4 years to atone for his crimes. He couldn't leave early. Moreover, this was announced privately within a small circle. He didn't publicly announce his crimes. Otherwise, the impact of this incident would be too bad. On this day, everyone saw that Chu Feng's expression was ugly. He was so angry that he wanted to leave the battlefield. 2 days later, the monkey sent news. The Hong family was resourceful and had helped Hong Yu obtain great medicine. It had already allowed his severed body to regrow and grow legs. Of course, he would be very weak for a short period of time. It was impossible for him to be as strong as his original body. When Hong Yunhai leaves, we'll keep watch for you. Or we can go with you to beat up Hong Xing and beat him half to death. Of course, don't kill him. When Chu Feng heard this, his eyes lit up and he nodded in agreement. On this day, Hong Yunhai was urgently summoned away. Hong Xing, who was recuperating in his tent, looked pale. His younger brother was also furious. He felt that this was too unbearable. He didn't make it onto the list and his elder brother had suffered such a huge loss. He really wanted to take revenge immediately, but his grandfather couldn't hide the truth from the masses. Boom! Suddenly, someone barged into the tent. Chu Feng walked in with large strides. Without saying a word, he swung his club at their brothers. On this day, the Hong brothers roared angrily and fought with all their might against Chu Feng. However, Hong Xing's body was weak, and he had only just grown his legs. His foundation was injured and his battle prowess was greatly reduced. He couldn't block the Wolf Fong Club at all. As for his younger brother, he couldn't be compared to Chowda in the Golden Body realm. There was no need to think about the outcome of this battle. In addition, the monkey, Peng Wanli, and Xiao Yao also entered the tent, causing the two brothers to feel a chill from head to toe. That day, many people heard the cries of ghosts and howls of wolves in the tent. The Hong brothers were trapped inside and were crippled by Chu Feng with a huge club. Chowda. When Chu Feng, Monkey, and the others left, Hong Yu roared angrily. He was covered in blood and could not get up. As for Hong Xing, he was motionless like a dead man. What are you arguing about? The world is so beautiful, but you guys are so violent. Chu Feng returned and entered the tent to intimidate them. Then, the entire world fell silent. The two brothers shut their mouths and their faces were pale, not daring to shout anymore. Only then did Chu Feng, Monkey, and the others leave completely. Chapter 1196. The Golden Body Camp was very large and occupied a vast area. There were tents everywhere and they were all creatures of this level. There were evolvers from different races. Hong Xing was crippled, and all the bones in Hong Yu's body were broken. This news quickly spread out, causing an uproar among all the golden-bodied creatures. However, people quickly realized that Hong Xing had really done something to his own people on the battlefield. He wanted to kill Chowda, and this was revenge. Many people looked down on him and despised his character. At the same time, people also felt that Chowda's true personality was strong and unyielding. He actually dared to flip the table and cripple the two grandsons of the person in charge of the Golden Body Camp, Hong Yunhai. Some people were worried that Chowda might suffer a great loss. After all, offending the Hong family would make it dangerous for him to go on the battlefield or in the camp in the future. Chowda is too straightforward. Although he has vented his anger, he is in danger himself. If such an upright person is killed in secret, this world will be too dark. No, we should support him. The Hong family has gone too far. For a moment, the crowd was filled with anger. Many people believed that Chowda was currently in a weak position. It seemed like he had turned the situation around, saved his life, and crippled Hong Xing, but in fact, he had buried the seeds of disaster. We went to the battlefield to fight the enemy, but the grandson of the person in charge of this place is scheming against us from behind. If we don't feel safe like this, how can we be loyal? We might as well turn around and join the opposite camp. The Hong family bullies others with their power, covering the sky with one hand and doing whatever they want. They have chilled the hearts of everyone on the battlefield. On this day, someone created such a commotion to fight for Chowda and support him. When the Hong brothers received the news, they were so angry that smoke was coming out of their 7 orifices. Blood seeped out of their injured bodies. They really wanted to curse. What the hell was this bullying and covering the sky with one hand? This made them feel even more aggrieved. The two of them felt that they had indeed wanted to harm Chowda in the beginning, but the development had exceeded their imagination. How could it be their turn to act like a tyrant? In the end, Chowda came knocking on their door and crippled both of them. Beside Chowda were the 6-eared macaque, the rock race, and the Dao race. Who was it that had covered the sky with one hand and committed murder in their grandfather's tent? Moreover, when their grandfather came back, his face was frighteningly gloomy. He didn't immediately go to Chowda to settle the score, because he had been warned. Who's taking advantage of their power to bully others? I hate it. Chow Hong's face turned pale, and he immediately fainted. In fact, all of this was done by Chu Feng's order for Monkey to find people to create a scene. He really felt that this place was too dark. If the Hong family became ruthless and made a move against him, it would be impossible to guard against it. Even if 6-ear macaque patted his chest and said that he would guarantee his safety, he did not want to gamble on it. He wanted to take all kinds of precautionary measures to build momentum and motivate the people. From Chu Feng's point of view, he was a typical victim. The other party could retaliate at any time. The darkness here was terrifying. Hong Sheng and Chu Feng had completely different views. It was a matter of position. They both felt that they were victims. Generally speaking, Chu Feng had a clear conscience. Others wanted to harm him, but he fought back. At this moment, Chu Feng was practicing his fist technique. There were many facilities in this camp. They looked simple and crude on the outside, just tents that stretched as far as the eye could see, but in fact there was another world inside these tents. They were cavern worlds. Right now, Chu Feng was in a special building. Here, there were all kinds of rare metal casting equipment. For example, the divine gold wall, as well as all kinds of ferocious birds and puppets made of copper. Now, Chu Feng's fist imprints were like rainbows. He was exercising here, and every time he punched, the wall made of rare metal would cave in. It was full of potholes, full of fist-sized holes. The attendants here all felt their scalps go numb when they saw this. What kind of monster was this? One had to know that even a secondary saint might not have such a heavy punch. It was too frightening. How could a golden-bodied youth be like this? One had to know that this kind of metal was too tough. Some experts used it to refine armor, and it was very rare and precious. Boom! Chu Feng leaped into the air, and his feet stomped on the wall until it caved in completely, almost collapsing. Dong! In the end, he punched out with his ultimate fist. With a loud rumble, he smashed through the wall, causing the attendant's towel to fall to the ground. He was so frightened that his face turned pale. He really wanted to cry out in shock. He wanted to tell others how freakish Chowda was. But he didn't dare because the 6-eared macaque and the experts from the Ping race had long warned him not to reveal anything here. Otherwise they would kill him first. This metal wall had a memory, and in the end it recovered on its own. Did you see that? How freakish! He smashed through the wall. This is a record-breaking fist strength. At the very least, there is no one stronger than this fist in this golden body camp. The monkey was speechless. Pring Wanli said, "Did you guys notice that the energy he injected is very special? It's specially prepared for people with death substitution talismans. Who is he trying to use this against?" Indeed, he wasn't wrong. Chu Feng was like this. He was researching killing techniques with one punch. He had long since learned about it from old Gu. In addition to his own practice, his current fist was extremely terrifying. It specialized in breaking through death substitution talismans. In truth, all the clans had researched this. Any defensive technique would be amazing at first, but there would always be a sharper spear that could pierce through it. The era was developing, and the path of evolution was getting further and further. Many things were changing. The monkey said, "This fellow has a lot of resentment in his heart. Although he beat up Hongxing and Hongyu, crippling them, this fellow is used to being domineering. He still feels like he suffered a loss." Xiao Yao said, "If we put ourselves in his shoes, we would most likely be the same. After all, who would dare to offend us normally? There's no need to talk about bullying or scheming against us." That makes sense. This means that Chowda isn't simple. He's actually quite arrogant. Could it be that he has some other background? The six-eared macaque was very sharp. The three of them were suspicious. They were actually able to make some deductions based on these clues. Who cares? He most likely came from the most terrifying hidden clan. We'll just pretend we don't know. Don't get to the bottom of it, Ping Wanli said. When it came to the hidden clan, the three of them had solemn expressions. The so-called hidden clan was the strongest clan that never appeared in the world. It was as if they were cut off from the rest of the world. Only occasionally would their disciples come out to walk around. For example, the Bodhi Buddhist clan of Three Stars Cave belonged to a foreign desolate clan that had transcended from the Buddha race. It was believed to have gone extinct long ago. If someone unexpectedly appeared now, it meant that the clan was still around, just that it had become a hidden clan. "Chowda, you should rest." Mi Tian walked over and called out to Chu Feng to rest. He also told him that his little sister had invited someone back. "Is that so? Then let's start early. I really want to spar with the second sage again," Chu Feng said. After training here, he was covered in sweat. After washing up, he finally felt refreshed. He was no longer stifled, and his excess energy had been released. "Okay, I'll go find her. We can discuss the time. We should indeed start early." The monkey nodded. Chu Feng sat down cross-legged and silently comprehended. This time, he had gained a lot from the battlefield. When he practiced the ultimate fist, he had come into contact with the floating blood mist on the battlefield, which had promoted the evolution of the ultimate fist. This fist technique was very special. Once it was used, a golden light would protect the body, and there would be a faint layer of blood light on the outermost layer, which could resonate with the blood of other creatures. In the course of the evolution of the various clans, a secret had gradually been revealed. The blood of all living creatures contained some kind of code, some kind of order fragment, which belonged to each clan. When Chu Feng practiced the ultimate fist, he could resonate with this natural pattern contained in the blood and comprehend it. This was a rare opportunity. Therefore, after he had practiced the fist technique to his heart's content, he had closed his eyes to comprehend it. The harvest was huge. In a sense, this large-scale battle on the battlefield had made his fist seal even more powerful. Not long after, Mi Tian's little sister arrived. Chu Feng was stunned. After seeing the real person, he was completely convinced that the monkey had not lied. His little sister was actually an outstanding beauty. Her skin was fair, and she had a head of glossy black hair. Her large eyes were pure and clear, and her entire person had a fairy-like aura. She was like a hazy mist, beautiful to the point of being unreal. "It really isn't the thunder god mouth," Chu Feng mumbled. "What did you say?" No matter how soft his voice was, the monkey could hear it clearly. Otherwise, he would be letting down his name as the six-eared macaque. In an instant, the monkey's face darkened as he recalled the scene of their first encounter. At that time, he had wanted to introduce his little sister to Chowda, but he had been given the cold shoulder. Mi Qing smiled faintly and gracefully walked over to greet Chu Feng. Clearly, she had heard how cruel he was. Chu Feng smiled and warmly greeted Mi Qing with a harmless expression. He mumbled inwardly. If he had known earlier that it wasn't the thunder god mouth but a true human body, he wouldn't have rejected her so directly. He started to compliment her, praising her for her transcendent beauty and how she was like a fairy from the heavens. "What do you want?" The monkey blocked Chu Feng and glared at him fiercely. Peng Wanli and Xiao Yao were both speechless. Mi Qing even laughed lightly and said, "Don't mind my brother. He's just a crazy person, always pointing fingers and pointing fingers. He's always more of a hindrance than a help. Miss Mi Qing is truly elegant and pure, intelligent and understanding. She's much better than a certain someone." Chu Feng actually wanted to say that she was much better than a certain monkey, but he felt that this might offend Mi Qing, so he changed his words. The monkey said, "Chow, I'm warning you, don't look around and don't have any ideas about my little sister. Just give up. I gave you a chance, but you didn't know how to cherish it. It's too late now." Chu Feng really wanted to say, "You damned monkey, you were just tricking me that day. You didn't have any plans at all, right?" Finally, he stared at the six-eared macaque and said, "Are the two of you really from the same mother?" The moment these words were said, the jade-white Mi Qing immediately giggled. Meanwhile, the monkey's face twitched, feeling that he had suffered a grave injury. His gaze was murderous, and he wanted to fight to the death with Chu Feng. However, after considering the consequences and the possibility that he would be beaten up, he forcefully restrained himself. At this time, someone came to report that someone from the quasi-sage camp had delivered a letter. "Let him in." Peng Wanli waved his hand. A young lady walked over. She could be considered pretty and had a good figure. She took graceful steps into the cave. She was a bit arrogant and her eyes were filled with disdain. She glanced at Chu Feng and said, "You must be Chowda. You're very arrogant and domineering. My family's young miss wants you to go over. Here, this is the letter." Chu Feng glanced over. Wasn't she just a maid? Naturally, a quasi-sage maid was indeed very powerful and amazing, but wasn't she a bit too arrogant? She was just delivering a letter, yet she was acting like this. He waved his hand and directly took the letter. After tearing it open, Chu Feng's expression became somewhat ugly. That so-called young miss had used a commanding tone to tell him to go to the quasi-sage camp and ask for forgiveness. "It's this woman?" The monkey glanced at the name inscribed on the letter, and his pupils instantly constricted. That was because this was one of the quasi-sage candidates they had to ambush. "My family's young miss said that it's fine if you beat up her people on the battlefield, but you even dared to cripple Hong Xing a second time. You're quite daring, and she wants you to go over and talk to her." This maid was arrogant and her words were very unyielding. The monkey transmitted his voice and told the maid who the woman behind her was. Chu Feng's expression instantly turned gloomy. He secretly said, "What candidate? Remove the word candidate. I'll beat her this time." There was a wave of anger in his heart. That so-called young miss was really too overbearing. She dared to speak to him like this. It was just a letter and she dared to domineeringly order him to go and ask for forgiveness. Chi chi chi. Chu Feng tore the letter into pieces and directly threw it at the young lady's face. "Tell her to wash herself clean. I'll go find her when I'm in a good mood. I don't have time now." Chapter 1197. Clean up? The few people present revealed strange expressions. Was he going to fight or was he going to flirt with her? "You!" This woman with a good figure immediately turned hostile. She considered herself a quasi-saint expert, and her words and actions were full of conceit. Now, someone had actually torn up a letter and thrown it on her face. She saw it as a humiliation. For a moment, her killing intent was revealed. Her almond-shaped eyes were wide open, revealing a biting cold intent. She stared at Chu Feng and said, "Are you declaring war?" Chu Feng didn't pay attention to her. Instead, he secretly told the monkey that no matter how powerful that so-called young lady was, she had to be the target of the ambush. "I'm talking to you. Did you hear me?" The woman who delivered the letter shouted. Although she was arrogant and conceited and her words were disrespectful, she didn't dare to make a move. What kind of joke was this? Chao Deji's ferocity had long been known. In addition, there were also the six-eared macaque siblings, as well as the rock race and the Dao race's devil incarnate. If they were to really make a move, she would probably be the one to walk out unscathed. My young lady invited you over. It's fine if you don't listen, but how dare you treat me like this? She shouted again, demanding an explanation. Is she inviting me over? She's ordering me to beg for forgiveness. Do you think I'll go just because she asks me to? Who is she to me? Chu Feng glanced at her, and a cold expression appeared on his face. He was indeed furious. He had come to the battlefield to sharpen himself, but in the end, he still encountered such a thing here. Some people wanted to cover the sky with one hand and did unspoken rules to him. However, was he that kind of person? One had to know that when he was in the lesser Een realm, he was a famous human trafficker who hunted divine sons and sold saintesses with all his might. It was impossible for him to admit defeat in the Yang realm. Therefore, not long ago, he transformed into the irascible elder brother and very straightforwardly crippled Hong Xing for the second time. Fine, you refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. Don't regret it. This woman sneered. With a flick of her sleeve, the fluttering letter paper turned into powder. Chu Feng directly took out his wolf Fong club and pointed it at her nose. If you dare to speak to me with such a tone again, I'll let you know why flowers are so red. The woman's expression suddenly changed. The densely packed nails on the big stick flickered with cold light. They were extremely sharp and were about to touch her nose. This was an undisguised threat and intimidation. In her eyes, this savage was too unbridled. Facing a messenger like her, he actually didn't care at all. One had to know that the person she was following had a great background, and the family behind that young lady was not one to be trifled with. Chowda, you're very good. I won't lower myself to your level today. I'll report the truth to my family's young miss. You'll have to bear the consequences yourself. The woman spoke, backing up. She was incomparably resentful. Every time she followed her family's young miss out on a trip, she would always be complimented by others. When had she ever encountered a situation like today? She felt that it was fine if he pointed his finger at her nose, but that barbarian actually pointed his wolf-tooth club at her nose. He was wild and hard to tame, too rude and unreasonable. Why don't you try threatening me again? Chu Feng's blood chi surged. Even though he was at the golden arhat level, he wasn't afraid of a secondary saint and pressed forward just like that. Mi Qing was speechless. Her fairy-like face was slightly stunned. This was her brother's wolf-tooth club. Very soon, she regained her composure. This Chowda was really as savage as the rumors said. No wonder even her brother was beaten up by him when they first met. Mi Qing clearly knew how great the background of the young miss behind this woman was. Brother, a good man doesn't fight with a woman. Let him go. Peng Wanli hugged that arm of Chu Feng's. He was really afraid that Chu Feng would smash down with his club and kill here. Now, Chu Feng had already become crazy in their eyes. Even his own people were on the same level as this legend. They were really afraid that he would flare up and go crazy on the spot. If Chu Feng knew what they were thinking, he would definitely beat them up. Fine, I'll go. Chowda, remember, you're destined to not have a good ending. How dare you treat a messenger like this, tear up my family's young miss's letter, and beg for forgiveness without obeying her orders. Just you wait. The woman sneered, raised her chin, opened the tent and walked out. Chu Feng's face sank. He had been threatened once again, and by that young miss made no less. Hong Long. At this moment, he suddenly threw the wolf Fong mace out. He used so much force that the wolf Fong mace, which was full of sharp nails, flipped and flew out. It was too fast. At this moment, let alone the woman, even Mi Tian, Xiao Yao, and the others were unable to react. none of them having expected Chowda to use such a sneak attack. This woman was not someone to be trifled with. Even if they didn't get along with each other, they were all hesitant about whether or not they should ambush her. But now, Chowda was so straightforward, hitting this woman's maid the first time they met. Obviously, this woman was not prepared at all. She didn't think that with her status, she would be hit with a club before leaving. Pooh. The thunderous wolf-tooth club smashed into the woman's buttocks, causing her to scream miserably as she was sent flying, blood splashing everywhere. Chowda! She roared angrily, feeling ashamed and in disbelief. The pain was unbearable as her buttocks had been smashed by the wolf-tooth club. I dare you to threaten me again, Chu Feng said with a black face. Moreover, he immediately chased after her with long strides. Aolo, the woman screamed in fear and trepidation. She raised a gust of wind and fled. One could see that she had transformed into her true form, a beast that looked like a weasel. The yellow wind around her kicked up sand and stones, and in the blink of an eye she had disappeared. She really didn't dare to stop. She had never seen such a hateful man, actually attacking her and smashing her buttocks. She was so ashamed and resentful that she hated Chowda to death. Outside, there were many golden arhats from various races, and after seeing this scene, all of them were dumbfounded. Old brother irascible, you're really something. I'm convinced. How could you attack just like that? Can't you be more magnanimous and take it easy? Pring Wanli rubbed his hands, really not knowing what to say. Who are you calling brother? You're all older than me, Chu Feng emphasized. However, was this the main point? Both Peng Wanli and the monkey were speechless. They felt that the main point of Chowda's attention was so delicate and beautiful. Mi Qing was also speechless, but soon she pursed her lips and secretly laughed. She felt that this Chowda was too interesting. She couldn't understand him at all. Compared to those heroes, he was truly strange and different. At the same time, she looked at the bloodstains outside the tent, as well as the gust of wind that fled into the distance. Even she felt pain for that woman's buttock. She was too unlucky to have encountered such a savage. At this time, many people in the Golden Arhat camp were alarmed. They knew what was going on and were all speechless. This Chowda was really honest and straightforward. He had offended another woman with a great background. Only the two brothers, Hong Xing and Hong Yu, couldn't help but curse out loud after hearing this. Honest my ass. That Chowda was definitely pretending to be violent and straightforward. In reality, he was very hateful and not a good thing at all. At the same time, Hong Xing felt guilty. He had once told people to say that he was wronged. He reckoned that those words had reached that woman's ears. Just based on their certain friendship, she would probably help him out. However, he didn't expect that Chowda would be so savage that he smashed the woman's messengers, but God knew what the consequences would be. He wasn't sure about the other consequences, but there was one thing he immediately realized. That was because Chowda had come again. Taking advantage of the fact that his grandfather was out again, he came looking for him. He was sure that he was the one who was stirring up trouble, so he beat him up again. Damn. He wanted to curse out loud. He had just changed the rare great medicine and was about to recuperate from his injuries. Damn it. He was beaten up again. At the same time, even his younger brother, Hong Yu, was beaten up again. He was so angry that his eyes rolled back and he directly fainted. In his stupor, he was still twitching in pain. What does it have to do with me? It's not like I called her here to interrogate you. Hong Xing gritted his teeth. He didn't know how long he would have to recuperate from his injuries. This great medicine had ruined more than one stock. It was too wasteful. It doesn't matter if you believe it or not. In any case, I believe it. You were the one who called for her. Chu Feng didn't even listen to his explanation. After beating him up, he directly patted his butt and left. F***ck. Hong Xing was so angry that he was trembling. He really wanted to fight him to the death. It was too shameful, too hateful, and too infuriating. He, Hong Sheng, was also an expert of his generation, but he had actually fallen to such a state. Brother, you were too fierce today. It's not too good to attack a woman like this, right? Peng Wanli said. Chu Feng sneered and said, she's already climbing all over me. How can I still smile along? If she provokes me, I don't care if she's a man or a woman. This was the truth. Back then in the little netherworld, it wasn't like he hadn't attacked those saintesses before. He had tied up a group of them and sold quite a few of them in the end. At the same time, he had also attacked his own child's mother in the beginning, beating her to death. In the end, he unexpectedly had a little Taoist. Do you know the background of that young lady? The monkey asked. He felt deeply troubled and frowned. Although he was also unhappy with that young lady, he really didn't want to provoke her. Therefore, that young lady was only on the list of candidates and wasn't listed as a key target for the ambush. How would I know? Just tell me. Chu Feng didn't care in the slightest. He was quite aloof and had long thought things through. If he really couldn't stay here any longer, he would just change his identity and run. Moreover, he might even be able to come back with another identity. That young lady is a blue-eyes golden-scaled scarlet-feathered beast, the monkey said with a serious expression. When this race was mentioned, even his little sister attached great importance to it. Divine light erupted from her beautiful and pure large eyes. Beast race. Chu Feng didn't feel too much about it, because he was completely ignorant and didn't understand it at all. It's not an ordinary beast race, but a golden qilin with scarlet wings. Xiao Yao informed. Qilin? Chu Feng was shocked. This species was definitely shockingly powerful. To be more precise, it's a variant of qilin. It's different from the powerful qilin recorded in books, the monkey said. It was indeed different. Normal qilins didn't have wings, but that race had scarlet divine wings. So what if it's a variant qilin? How strong is she? Can she be so tyrannical and domineering? Chu Feng was dissatisfied, but he wasn't too worried. Peng Wanli said, she's very strong, otherwise she wouldn't be on that list. But what's even more worrying is that the people related to her are all very powerful. Following that, the monkey introduced the young lady of the blue eyes golden-scaled scarlet-feathered beast race. Her looks were outstanding, and she had fallen in love with the #1 expert of the Saint camp. In other words, she had a very close relationship with the #1 saint of the Yongzhou camp. Moreover, she also has an older brother who is ranked 3rd among the divine-level experts. Xiao Yao said. Chu Feng couldn't help but be moved after hearing this. The two men who had a close relationship with this young lady were actually so abnormal. At the same time, in the quasi-sage camp, the girl who had escaped was crying and complaining. She had turned into a small beast with smooth fur and was describing Chao Da's barbaric and tyrannical actions. Young lady, you must personally suppress and kill him. He's too hateful. He didn't even take your words to heart and directly tore your letter. This girl was extremely beautiful. She had a head of long golden hair, and her skin was snow-white like jade. Her blue eyes were sparkling, and there was even a pair of scarlet divine wings on her back. Her entire body was enveloped in a divine halo. Chapter 1198. In the Golden Body Camp, the tents were densely packed, and the evolvers of the various races were discussing. The two Hong brothers were beaten up again. No one knew how serious their injuries were, but they wouldn't be able to get out of bed for the time being. This made everyone speechless. It was Chowda again. This is a true character, as expected of Brother Honest. There's no sand in my eyes. Chowda probably knew that the noble lady's messenger was invited by Hong Xing, so he was rash and directly went to beat him up. His personality is straightforward and too honest. When Hong Xing and Hong Yu heard this discussion, they were so angry that their lips trembled. They almost wanted to crawl up from their sickbeds and fight with someone. The two brothers really wanted to spit on the faces of all the commentators. True character and brother honest. How could all of these fall into the hands of someone surnamed Chow? They felt that this world was too dark. That cruel and tyrannical Chow always took advantage of others. No matter how they looked at him, he didn't look like a good person. How could he have such a reputation? For a time, they doubted life. Originally, they wanted to hunt Chowda and kill him. Then, they would take his place on the list and obtain good fortune. In the end, they realized that Chowda was even more like a villain than them. He was strong and domineering, crippling them one after another. What they couldn't stand the most was that the public opinion sympathized with Chowda, saying that he was too straightforward and only attacked in anger after being forced into a corner, causing him to fall into an even more dangerous situation. Everyone thought that Chowda could be retaliated against by the Hong family at any time. I'm going crazy. The originally imposing Hong Xing was now like a frosted eggplant, withered. He simply couldn't stand it. In the end, the two of them were too miserable. They carried a bad reputation and were always beaten up. Every time, they would be beaten half to death. Their bodies were crippled, and their spirits were also damaged. Everyone, thank you for your support. Chowda will remember this. I am too honest and stubborn. When faced with people who want to harm me again and again, I can't control myself. So, I went straight to their door. Chu Feng saw the heated discussion outside, so he purposely showed his face and expressed his gratitude with a straightforward manner. At the same time, he expressed that if anything were to happen to him, it would definitely be the Hong family's doing. He asked everyone to be a witness. If he were to die, he would be buried on the battlefield. This was the best ending for those who went to the battlefield. Brother Gengji, don't worry. The Hong family can't do whatever they want. We're all watching and standing behind you. Many people expressed their support. Chu Feng cupped his fists to express his gratitude before retreating into the cave dwelling in the tent. The six-eared macaque Tian bared his teeth and said, Chow, you really have the nerve to beat the Hong brothers up so badly and then run off to gain sympathy. How shameless. Chu Feng's face darkened as he said, I have always been honest and kind. It was them who harmed me again and again. I was forced to retaliate. Then, he stared at the monkey and said, Let's settle the score too. Monkey was shocked and said, Wait a moment. Don't tell me you're really going to beat up your own people when you go crazy? Do I look like that kind of person? Chu Feng glared at him. The monkey, Peng Wanli, and Xiao Yao all nodded subconsciously. Only Mi Qing was smiling secretly. What do you mean? You guys actually look at me like that. All right then, let's settle the score. Chu Feng said. Settle what score? Peng Wanli asked. Chu Feng said, We're going to ambush the secondary saint soon. But the more I think about it, the more I don't like it. I'm going to be your hired thug for no reason. What do I get in the end? The monkey rolled his eyes and said, Chowda, do you know that the Dao fusion herb is unparalleled in the world? It can raise a living being's ultimate achievement. You have the chance to get close to it, yet you're still not satisfied? What else do you want? Peng Wanli and Xiao Yao also wanted to suppress him. Chu Feng looked at them from the corner of his eyes and said, Stop it. You guys all have the support of your clans. If the ambush really succeeds, the few of you will most likely be able to enter that list. As for me, a lone cultivator, I might become the scapegoat for this storm. I won't get any benefits and might even be in big trouble. You guys see that I'm honest and straightforward. You want to make use of me? No way. Honest my ass. The few of them wanted to scold him. If he was really an honest person, he wouldn't think so much and would have cooperated happily long ago. Xiao Yao said, Chowda, you're thinking too much. How can something like that happen? As long as our ambush succeeds, we'll be considered a heaven-bestowed golden body expert. With a halo around us, we'll be able to enter that list. If we can enter, will we leave you behind? Chu Feng shook his head and said, Forget it. It's only been a few days since I came to the battlefield, but I've already sensed too much darkness. This place eats people up without spitting out their bones. You guys have more foundation than Hong Yu, and your origins are even greater. The Pring race, Dao race, and six-eared macaque race, which one of them isn't glorious in ancient history? If I were to mix with you guys, I'll most likely become a scapegoat in the end. I'll be schemed against by your clans and they'll swallow me whole. Peng Wanli was very solemn as he said, Brother Chow, you're thinking too much. We're like-minded and have formed an alliance. We're all brothers in the same trench. How can we burn the bridge after crossing the river and treat you like that? You guys might not have such thoughts for the time being, but the hearts of the old fellows behind you are probably already shining with darkness. Ask yourselves, if we really succeed in ambushing the quasi-saints, will the storm be very big? If those quasi-saints are pushed down because of this, will the unfathomable clans behind them let the matter rest? And what will the old fellows in your clans do? They'll most likely have a secret discussion with them and reach a compromise. The first step is to let them vent their anger. They'll most likely toss me out and make me their sacrifice. After hearing Chu Feng's words, the few of them were speechless. Based on their understanding of the elders in their clans, this wasn't impossible. The hearts of the old fellows were all very dark. If they weren't dark, they wouldn't have lived until now. Moreover, the compromise between the Peak clans was most likely accompanied by blood and required sacrifices. So, I'm not doing it anymore. I'm preparing to leave, said Chu Feng. The few of them immediately became anxious when they heard this. They were about to make a move, but Chowda had withdrawn. This seriously affected the plan, and everything would be put on hold. They couldn't accept this. Brother Chow, what do you think I should do to set my mind at ease? You have to know that the Dao Fusion herb can increase your ultimate achievement. If you have the aptitude of a divine king, it can help you become a celestial venerable in the end. If you have the potential to become a celestial venerable, it will push you forward and make you become an almighty sooner or later. This is enough to make people go crazy. The few of them were tempting and asking questions, wanting Chu Feng to tell them what he should do to set his mind at ease. Chu Feng said, How about we use a prehistoric soul light blood oath to guarantee it? The few of them were immediately shocked when they heard this. A prehistoric soul light blood oath was quite terrifying and almost unsolvable, causing them to feel conflicted. Upon seeing this, Chu Feng stood up and was about to leave. Fine, we'll use this soul light blood oath as a guarantee. Mi Tian, Peng Wanli, and the others cared too much about this opportunity and didn't want to give it up. This was related to their future, so they wanted to fight their way forward. Their soul lights were dazzling, their blood essence was flowing, and strange symbols were condensing. Everyone was swearing that if they succeeded in ambushing the second saint, they would obtain a common good fortune. Otherwise, they would be struck by lightning and suffer for the rest of their lives. However, Chu Feng felt that this oath wasn't vicious enough, so he made them swear it again. This caused their faces to turn green, and in the end, they all had a shadow in their hearts. It wasn't until a very long time later, when even Chu Feng was a little scared listening to it, that it finally ended. After swearing the oath, the few of them started discussing. They had to find a way to communicate with the old guys in their clans so that when the time came, they wouldn't throw him out as a sacrificial offering like Chowda had said. After all, they had all sworn an oath here to obtain a common good fortune. If the elders in their clans didn't know about it, it would be very troublesome if they treated him as an abandoned pawn when the time came. I'm still a little worried, Chu Feng said. At this moment, these few people's eyes were green as they looked at Chu Feng. They really wanted to ask him how they could be completely at ease. One had to know that their soul lights were resonating here just now, and they were carrying out all kinds of blood oaths. The monkey said faintly, Chow, how miserable do you want us to be? Just now we kept swearing. Just the different ways of dying alone are already no less than dozens. The few of them swore according to the requirements. Once they violated it, they would experience all kinds of cruel ways of dying from ancient times to the present, such as being split apart by a car, lighting a sky lantern, having their hearts cut out, being dismembered by 5 horses, and so on. Therefore, at this time, their eyes were all green as they stared at Chu Feng, making him feel embarrassed himself. Chu Feng waved his hand and said, "All right, what's the point of being so calculative? One has to be magnanimous as a person. Look at you guys, each and every one of your faces is emaciated, looking like you've suffered great bitterness and hatred." Indeed, Mi Qing was the only one who could still smile. However, those few people didn't see it that way. The monkey was incredibly indignant as he said, "You have the nerve to talk about magnanimity? Isn't one oath enough? How many did you make us swear? I've carefully counted, and there's a total of 57 ways of dying." This also meant that they swore a total of 57 kinds of soul-like blood oaths. Chu Feng laughed dryly and said, "Is there that many? You must have remembered wrongly. Moreover, is it worth haggling over matters of the past?" The few people really wanted to say, "Don't you have any idea in your heart whether there are so many deadly oaths? Moreover, who's the one haggling over magnanimity? You have to make us swear for more than 2 hours, talking endlessly, swearing until we're foaming at the corners of our mouths." The few people didn't want to talk to him anymore. Chu Feng hurriedly changed the topic and said, "Didn't younger sister Mi Qing invite an expert? Where is he?" When they talked about proper matters, the few people all became solemn and told him that it was an expert of the red-scaled crane race. His magic power was tyrannical and his corporeal body was tough. He rarely had a match in the golden body domain. He's called Qi Linkong. He was arranged to rest in a large tent. The red-scaled crane race was undoubtedly a crane race, but their entire body was covered in scarlet red scales, making their corporeal bodies exceptionally powerful. This was an extremely ancient and terrifying race, the crane race of alien desolation. On the way, Chu Feng asked, "Do we also have to make him swear 20 to 30 oaths?" At this moment, even Mi Qing, who had a sweet smile on her face all along, had a somewhat unnatural expression and slightly stiffened. "Brother Chow, you're of the degeneration. Don't mention this kind of unbearable request anymore, all right? It's enough that the few of us swear." "All right then." Chu Feng nodded and put on a magnanimous appearance. He said, "These are all nothing. I'm just saying it casually. Actually, even you guys don't need to swear. I trust you guys very much." "Trust my ass." The few of them all looked at him with disdain. Not long ago, they were already swearing to the point of vomiting. Why didn't you say this? In the end, you still didn't think it was too much, and even wanted them to swear a few more. "Chowda, get out here and welcome the holy envoys." Right at this moment, someone shouted loudly, shaking the entire Golden Body Camp area. Chu Feng's expression changed and he said, "They're coming over on their own. We might as well take this opportunity to get rid of all of them." Chapter 1199. Mi Qing's footsteps were light like a fairy from a painting, disappearing in the blink of an eye. She went to find Qi Linkong, preparing to participate in this ambush. "Chowda, why aren't you getting over here yet?" someone shouted. Moreover, a large tent in the distance was directly smashed apart by a treasured pestle. The small cave inside suddenly collapsed and exploded on the spot. That was Chu Feng's cave inside the tent, yet it was actually destroyed so easily. The newcomers came with ill intentions, without the slightest misgivings. They were just that direct, wanting to slap Chowda's face. Chu Feng's expression immediately sunk. He naturally heard these shouts. Moreover, he also heard the voice of that weasel demon from before. "Go, let's go over." The monkey spoke. His expression wasn't that great either. That was the cave inside the tent he had gifted to Chu Feng. There was the 6-eared macaque race's special insignia on the tent. Just this insignia alone was a type of guarantee that could ensure one's safety. However, the people who came today didn't care at all and directly destroyed that small cave. Chu Feng, the monkey, Peng Wanli, and Xiao Yao walked over together. Their expressions were all serious. Even though they didn't say anything, everyone along the way shivered inwardly. A battle might break out. They could already see from far away that there were a few figures standing there. The one in the lead was an extremely outstanding woman. She was tall and slender, her curves undulating up and down. Her figure was excellent, and she had a head of long golden hair that flickered like sunlight. Her skin was fair and her face was exquisite. She was extremely pretty, and her large eyes were green. Her nose was tall and straight, and her red lips were moist and sexy. This woman was extremely beautiful. Her clothes fluttered in the wind. There was a pair of red wings on her back that flowed with sparkling scarlet multicolored light. Her entire body was surrounded by a divine ring, and her temperament was extremely outstanding. This was the young miss of the scarlet feather race with blue eyes and golden scales. This race was a mutation of a Qilin. Her name was Jean Lin, and she was extremely powerful among the quasi-saints. Otherwise, she wouldn't have made it onto that list. The woman from before, the messenger and maid sent out by Jean Lin, was also there. She had changed into a set of clothes. Her figure wasn't bad, and her appearance wasn't bad. However, her face was full of coldness as she stared at Chu Feng. Up until now, it was still difficult for her to walk. Even though she had applied the spiritual medicine, she still felt a piercing pain in her buttock. Such a huge mace was thrown out and smashed on her body. That feeling almost made her break down. At this moment, Chu Feng, Monkey, and the others had arrived. They stared straight at her, or to be more precise, at her buttocks. She was instantly embarrassed, and her eyes were spewing flames of anger, and her pretty face was flushed. "What are you looking at?" she berated. She was the one who had challenged him earlier, speaking disrespectfully and telling Chu Feng to get his ass over here. It was because her heart was too ashamed and resentful, and also too resentful. What she suffered today was not only trauma, but also mental humiliation. "Shut up," the monkey said, staring at her feet, which happened to be stepping on the tent. It was a complete mess. After all, a small cave dwelling had been destroyed. The monkey's eyes were spewing fire because the six-eared macaque's race emblem was at the feet of the woman whose buttocks had been smashed by Chu Feng. It was unknown if it was done unintentionally or intentionally. There were a total of 4 people. Other than the master and servant, there were 2 other women who also had extraordinary looks. One was tall and slender, and the other was petite and exquisite. Both of them were very beautiful. All 4 of them were quasi-saints, and this kind of attack put great pressure on them. "Who are you telling to shut up? We are here to denounce you," the weasel demon said hatefully. After all, she was also a quasi-saint. Now that she had come with the eldest miss, and the 2 best friends of the young miss were also experts, she naturally wasn't afraid. Even if she was facing the 6-eared macaque, she was still very confident. "Jean Lin, you are really used to being domineering. You are just a maid, yet you dare to speak to us like this and order us around. Are you trying to bully our race because we have no one?" At this point, the monkey was even more furious. He stared at the shattered race emblem on the ground again and said, "Jean Lin, is this your idea, or is she trying to take revenge by trampling on our race emblem?" "Oh, I didn't see it. So it turns out that you are your race emblem. Sorry." The weasel that had transformed into a woman could be considered pretty. She apologized hypocritically and smiled, but very soon, the corner of her mouth twitched because her butt was in too much pain. She suspected that blood was seeping out, and her expression suddenly changed. "Jean Lin, is this your idea?" The monkey was furious. That was because up until now, the main character hadn't opened her mouth or paid them any attention. Only a maid was pestering them. Was she looking down on them? Chu Feng's expression also changed. He saw that the few pieces of his clothes hadn't been destroyed along with the collapse of the small abode. Instead, they were being stepped on by those people. Was she purposely leaving them behind? Me Tion, I know you have always been unconvinced by me, but this has nothing to do with you today. Move aside. Jean Lin finally spoke. Her long golden hair that was shining brilliantly danced in the wind. Her figure was excellent, and her curves were undulating. Her bright red lips opened and closed, and her voice was very cold. She was very beautiful, but now she didn't pretend to speak. She emitted an ice-cold temperament as she looked at Chu Feng and said, "You're quite bold." "I've always been bold." Chu Feng was happy and fearless as he stared at her. The monkey's expression was very unsightly as he said, "Jean Lin, what's the meaning of this? Did you come here just to humiliate us? I can't be bothered to bicker with you right now. I just want to capture this madman." Jean Lin was very domineering. She looked sexy and beautiful, but her expression was cold and emitted wisps of killing intent. She locked onto Chu Feng and strode forward. "Chowda, a wild cultivator like you might have some strength, but you're still far from being invincible in the same realm. There's nothing to be arrogant about. There are plenty of people stronger than you. We've all come from your realm, so don't be arrogant in front of me." She flung her long golden hair with an indifferent expression. Her divine ring shrouded her, and she became even more domineering. Chu Feng wasn't afraid in the slightest and said, "What a pity. You guys aren't in the golden body domain, so you can naturally say whatever you want now. But don't worry, I'll enter the quasi-saint domain right away. We'll get to know each other better then." Jean Lin said disdainfully, "You dare enter the quasi-saint domain? Will there still be anything good for you when you're in our camp? If you hide in the golden body camp, perhaps no one will be willing to touch you. But if you really dare to step into our domain, how many days can you live?" This was contempt, but it was also a kind of intimidation and threat. She was telling Chu Feng that Chu Feng wouldn't be able to survive in the quasi-saint camp based on his actions. Chu Feng said coldly, I really want to enter the quasi-saint domain soon. I want to see why I can't live for more than a few days." "Who do you think you are? Conceited and self-righteous. Even if you're somewhat extraordinary now, you're still too inferior compared to Big Brother Qianlong. You can't even withstand a single blow." Jean Lin said disdainfully, "Big Brother Qianlong was truly invincible in the quasi-saint domain back then. With a single finger you could suppress those equally conceited geniuses." Obviously, when she mentioned Qianlong, her face was brimming with a kind of radiance and a strange expression. "Who is Qianlong?" Chu Feng secretly asked Monkey. "The current #1 saint in Harmony State's camp, the former strongest in the quasi-saint domain," Mi Tian replied secretly, telling him that he was a troublesome character and somewhat unfathomable. After saying this, Jean Lin's expression turned cold, and she withdrew the strange radiance. The reason she mentioned this seemed to be to praise Qianlong. He could sense that Jean Lin seemed to like that powerful saint. "I can't be bothered to talk to you anymore. Immediately apologize to my maidservant and then go to Hong Xing to ask for forgiveness," Jean Lin said in a very unyielding tone. Chu Feng was immediately unhappy and secretly asked Monkey, "Is her true form really a golden qilin with red wings?" "Yes, what do you want to do?" Six-eared Monkey was surprised. He, Peng Wanli, and Xiao Yao were secretly evaluating whether it would be too difficult to fight against 4 quasi-saints. Chu Feng secretly said, "I just want to ask if there's anyone who uses a blue-eyed golden-scaled scarlet feather beast as a mount?" Monkey's pupils shrank as he looked at Chu Feng. He felt that this guy was really audacious. Was he planning to use underhanded means to make Jean Lin his mount? It seemed that this savage had only come up with such an idea because he was angered. Next, he looked at Jean Lin. At this moment, she was slender and graceful with sexy curves. Her golden hair was shining like the sun, and her bright eyes, pearly white teeth, and red lips made her look extremely beautiful. Chapter 1200. The monkey's eyes flickered, and his entire body was golden. He was staring at Jean Lin in a daze, because he was imagining the scene of Chao De suppressing her and forcing her to become his mount. For a moment, his mind was elsewhere, and the expression on his face was rippling. Jean Lin's expression immediately turned cold because she found the six-eared macaque staring at her in a daze. His smile was so strange, it was just too wretched. "Me Tian, do you want to die?" Jean Lin shouted. The six-eared macaque came back to his senses and found that Jean Lin was aiming at him. Her eyes were spewing fire, and her anger was boiling. What was going on? Chu Feng kindly lifted up his sleeve and helped him wipe the corner of his mouth. "Pay attention to your image, you're drooling." The monkey was puzzled. Where did the drool come from? Why was this irascible brother like this? Then, he understood that they were slandering him. Chao De. His face and neck were red. That damned Chao De, to actually add insult to injury and ruin his reputation. "I was just in a daze," he corrected. Chu Feng nodded and said, "We understand. It's normal to know how to be lecherous." Scram! The monkey flew into a rage out of humiliation. And at this time, Chu Feng was making preparations. He was going to take advantage of this opportunity to give this woman a mace. This was because he was really angry. She actually dared to force him to apologize for the weasel and Hong Xing. He teased the monkey to divert everyone's attention, and at the same time, he quickly communicated with the monkey and Peng Wanli, telling them that it was time to make their move. "Chao De, your parents really did consider the factors that make up for what you lack. You're too wicked." The monkey gnashed his teeth. Even if it was to deliberately divert everyone's attention, there was no need to make him the scapegoat. If this were to spread among the aristocratic families, it would be too embarrassing for him. "Ready!" Chu Feng was about to shout. He wanted to smash Jean Lin's head with the mace, and then smash the weasel's body. However, right at this moment, Mi Qing's urgent voice transmission came from the shadows. "Don't attack, there's an ambush." Mi Qing came, but she didn't show herself. She invited the Scarlet-Scaled Crane Race's outstanding talent Qi Lingkong. He was currently hiding in the distance, sensing some type of dangerous situation. Chu Feng and Monkey were shocked. There was a trap here? At this moment, Peng Wanli and Xiao Yao's hearts sank. After that, their bodies turned cold. They were scheming against the secondary saint, wanting to overturn him. But now, others also wanted to kill them? "Don't attack," Monkey secretly reminded Chu Feng. "The one who makes the first move gains the upper hand, the one who makes the last move suffers a calamity. Just watch this wolf teeth may strike down. I guarantee that this mutated Qilin girl's face will be covered in blood, showing off her elegant demeanor." Chu Feng told him valiantly that he couldn't wait any longer. This young lady was too domineering, which made him feel uncomfortable. "Wait a moment." Monkey quickly told him the rules of this place. High-level evolvers weren't allowed to take the initiative to attack low-level cultivators, or else they would be severely punished. This was to prevent gods and saints from deliberately finding trouble with low-level cultivators. If they didn't do anything, wouldn't the great cultivators be able to take revenge at will and kill the weak if there was enmity between the two races? Therefore, there were rules here that forbade high-level evolvers from bullying the weak. If anyone broke the law, they would be severely punished or even killed on the spot. However, if low-level cultivators were courting death and took the initiative to attack, they wouldn't be protected anymore. Experts could directly attack. Chu Feng's face sank. He secretly asked, "You're saying that this woman is fishing and provoking me on purpose to provoke me, luring me into attacking her so that she can kill me?" "That should be the case," Monkey replied solemnly. Peng Wanli and Xiao Yao also made the same judgment. Now, who didn't know about Chao De's honesty? He was really someone who would burn the moment he touched fire. Didn't he see that Hong Xing and his brother had already been crippled several times? Monkey said, Those people feel that old Brother Grumpy will attack if he provokes you a little. They're waiting for you to make a mistake. Then, it won't be a problem for them to cripple or kill you." After hearing that, Chu Feng's face darkened. "Who's old Brother Grumpy? All of you are older than me. Also, that woman has a huge chest and looks like a domineering young lady. So it's on purpose. In that case, she's quite scheming and is even more hateful than what I feel?" Monkey said, "That's right. This woman isn't a kind person at all. Why do you think she's here talking to you for no reason? If she had a choice, she could have killed you. She didn't even say a word and would have killed you long ago." Chu Feng's eyes were dark. He felt that the direct descendants of some famous and powerful races that he had come into contact with were not kind people. Monkey was not a good bird either. A slight carelessness would cause him to suffer. Their secret conversation was completed with their consciousness. All of it ended in a single thought, so it didn't arouse the suspicions of Jean Lin and the others. At this time, Jean Lin was still looking down on the six-eared macaque. "You wretched, rotten monkey. We'll settle the score later." Mi Tian's face turned green. He was inexplicably put on a bad name, so he was in a very bad mood. At this time, Chu Feng was looking at Jean Lin with discomfort. This woman had an excellent figure with undulating curves and outstanding looks. However, she had come with killing intent. He felt that it was necessary to suppress her as a mount. He wanted her to understand why flowers were so red. With a hammer, he would beat her up regardless of whether she was a mutated Qilin or not. Jean Lin berated, "Your eyes are so sneaky. You're definitely not a good person." As for the weasel woman, she went along with it. She didn't have anything nice to say and helped Jean Lin ridicule Chu Feng and Monkey. She was purposely provoking old Brother Grumpy so that Chowda would make a move. "Jean Lin, how can you be a person in a pond? Once you encounter a storm, you'll transform into a dragon." Chu Feng chanted, "Looks like you'll break free from the pond sooner or later. Why don't you just call yourself Jean Hualong?" "What are you saying? Chowda, you should know that you won't die if you don't court death." Jean Lin's two best friends spoke up. As for Jean Lin herself, a cold light flashed in her eyes. This Chowda actually dared to tease her. At the same time, she was a little surprised. Wasn't this a person with a bad temper who would explode at the slightest provocation? Why wasn't he jumping up and down? "Do you want to die?" Jean Lin said coldly. She didn't try to hide anything and forced Chu Feng's hand. If it were just the few of them here, Chu Feng would have already swung his mace and attacked her first. However, now that he knew that there was still a second saint hiding in the dark, he didn't want to act according to the other party's rhythm. Chu Feng said, "Even if I want to die, no one can stop me." These words were a little arrogant, causing the expressions of the women present to turn cold. He then said, "You definitely can't stop me, but if it's just the two of us, I should be able to stop you." These words were arrogant and ambiguous, causing the expressions of the four women to turn ugly. Their killing intent surged. "Then you can try. If you can touch a single hair on our young miss, we'll consider it our loss," the woman who had transformed from the weasel spirit said. Chu Feng shot a glance at her and pretended to be disdainful. "Stand to one side. I'm talking to your young miss. It's not your turn to speak." This irascible brother didn't make the first move. Jean Lin and the others gritted their teeth. If they wanted to teach this person a lesson, they would be severely punished regardless of whether they crippled or crippled him. "Oh right, you're not my match. Go and call that Kuan Long over." Chu Feng provoked back, but he had no intention of making a move. "Brother Kuan Long isn't someone you can mention. You're not fit to be mentioned in the same breath as him. There's a difference between heaven and earth. Don't flatter yourself." Jean Lin rebuked with an ugly expression. Chu Feng was very surprised and asked Monkey how strong this Kuan Long was. Mi Tian told him that it was actually a dragon, but it had grown up in a Kuan's nest and was respectfully called Brother Long. It was known as the first saber saint, and as long as it attacked, its saber chi would be unstoppable. No one in the same realm could be its opponent. First saber my ass. I'll deal with him later. Chowda, don't talk nonsense. This Kuan Long has always had his saber with him. He even eats and sleeps with his saber. He has already comprehended the essence of the saber Tao. Chu Feng said, forget it, let's not talk about him for now. There will be a battle sooner or later, and when the time comes, I'll make sure he can't even hold his saber steadily. At this time, a group of people walked over silently from not far away. There were 8 of them, and all of them were quasi-sages. Those who were hiding in the dark and preparing to kill Chu Feng all came out because they could see that this irascible brother was acting strangely today. He was cultivating his mind, not cooperating at all, and was unwilling to make a move. Jin Lin, what's the meaning of this? You found a group of quasi-sages and deliberately provoked us just now. Do you want to ambush all of us? Monkey said angrily. He pretended not to know and was nitpicking like this. At the same time, his heart did indeed sink. They had originally wanted to ambush Jin Lin, but they had almost fallen into her trap. This was not good news, and it was very bad. Could it be that the other party had seen through their plan? Jin Lin said, I can't be bothered with you. I only came for Chowda. Seeing that she didn't seem to be lying, Monkey heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. Otherwise, the other party would be on guard and gather a group of quasi-sages. Then, his and Chowda's ambush plan would be delayed, and it wouldn't be easy to carry out. You're lucky today to be able to restrain yourself so much. Jin Lin was tall, and she walked over gracefully. She was only a foot away from Chu Feng, and her body was shrouded in a divine halo. Her golden hair fluttered in the wind as she stretched out a jade-white hand and poked Chu Feng's chest. You better be careful. Her skin was as fair as jade. Although her appearance was outstanding and alluring, there was a cold, murderous intent hidden in her eyes. Quite a number of people had arrived in the vicinity and were quietly watching this scene. The people of the Golden Body Camp were all very nervous. This was a group of quasi-sages that had come knocking on their door. At the same time, when they learned of Jin Lin's identity and saw her attitude, they all felt that Chowda was in big trouble and that his life would be in danger in the future. Chu Feng felt uncomfortable in his heart. This woman was still provoking him before she left, poking his chest at such a close distance and poking at him again and again. This made his eyes burn endlessly. After that, the people in the surroundings were all stunned and almost petrified. They really wanted to say that this irascible brother's temper had flared up again. What was he doing? Chu Feng stretched out his hand and also poked the other party's snow-white and exquisite skin, saying, You better be careful too. He had acted too quickly. Jin Lin hadn't expected this at all. She was completely stunned, and then her body tensed up as goosebumps appeared all over her body. Chapter 1201. Moreover, Chu Feng poked again and felt that it was very slippery. It was fine if he didn't stop at the first instance, but on the contrary, he poked twice more. Ah! Jin Lin screamed. Her long golden hair fluttered in the wind as a pair of scarlet wings spread open behind her. Her fair and slender body emitted a divine light that transformed into a protective light screen. At this moment, 12 divine halos formed on the surface of her body, making her look incomparably dazzling. She was like a goddess respected by all races, holy and transcendent. Of course, her beautiful face was filled with anger as 2 beams of divine light shot out from her eyes. This kind of scream was a little terrifying as it formed energy ripples, causing many golden arhats nearby to cover their ears as they revealed pained expressions. Those who were too close even bled from all 7 apertures as they were heavily injured. This was the sound wave of a top figure among the quasi-saints. Its destructive power was extremely shocking. The other quasi-saints were petrified, including Jin Lin's 2 best friends. They also opened their bright red little mouths and were dumbfounded. Wasn't that Chao De too daring? Jean Lin's eyes were spewing fire. She retreated at the first instant out of instinct, just now like a golden bolt of lightning, distancing herself 30 meters away from her original spot. Her towering chest was heaving up and down violently. Her breathtaking face was filled with boundless fury as goosebumps crawled all over her fair and delicate skin. She was shocked, angry, and furious. She really wanted to kill someone. That Chowda actually dared to be so rude. What made her most furious and resentful was that wild cultivator's current expression. After poking again and again, he actually had a rippling expression. He actually lowered his head to look at his own hand and let out a light sigh. Not to mention the others, even Xiao Yao, Peng Wanli, and the others were grinning with stiff expressions. Wasn't this Chao De too daring? Even Monkey was baring his teeth. The god of thunder couldn't close his mouth and was tongue-tied. His body was frozen there and his facial expression was petrified. He felt like he had seen a ghost. What did he see? Chowda really dared to do anything. Chi. Jean Lin flew into a rage out of humiliation upon seeing this. The pair of wings that blossomed with scarlet light unfolded behind her, raising her speed to the limit. Like a fluttering light, she stuck close to the ground and instantly arrived before raising her hand to chop. Chu Feng's hands were swift as he pulled up the monkey that was standing shoulder to shoulder with him. He used soul light to transmit his voice and said, "Playing dead. She's been infuriated by us." When the monkey heard this, he felt that it made sense. In the camp of Yongzhou, high-level evolved beings couldn't bully the weak. Otherwise, they would be severely punished or even killed. Following this, the monkey prepared himself to be beaten up. He felt that Chowda's words were correct and that he should use the rules to get rid of the Qilin girl. At the same time, he instantly thought that Chowda, this honest brother, was actually too mean. In order to provoke Jean Lin, he actually dared to poke around. As it was too sudden, Monkey didn't think too much. He immediately shouted, "Murder!" He was afraid that Jean Lin would kill him on the spot in a fit of rage. If that happened, it wouldn't be worth it to punish Jean Lin severely afterwards. However, at the last moment, Monkey still came back to his senses. Why did this bastard Chao De drag him forward? In an instant, he came to a realization and really wanted to say, "Damn you." He simply wanted to stomp his feet. This bastard Chowda hid at the back and sent him out, causing him to be injured and even scamming. This was too much of a bastard. Needless to say, Monkey's shout was rather effective. Jean Lin's humiliated, angry, and restless heart calmed down slightly. She stopped at the first instance. She was also afraid that people would find a reason to punish her severely if she broke the rules. However, Chu Feng was still preparing to carry Monkey and retreat just now. It would be fine if he was slightly injured. In the end, when he saw the situation now, he immediately pushed him forward slightly. Bang! Monkey instantly suffered a palm strike and was so angry that his liver hurt. That's right, it wasn't really painful. His injuries were very light, but he was angered by Chu Feng. He felt that this grandson was too mean. Hurry up and fall down. Also, spit out blood as much as you can. Otherwise, you'll be beaten for nothing. Chu Feng transmitted his voice to the monkey through soul light and secretly roared. The six-eared macaque really wanted to turn around and give him a slap. However, after thinking about it, it would be a waste if he didn't trick the Qilin girl once. Then, he conveniently fell to the ground and coughed with all his might. He didn't hesitate to give his gums a slap and spit out a mouthful of bloody saliva. He listened to Chu Feng's suggestion and fell to the ground to scam. Then, Chu Feng let out a long howl. The second sage is acting violently, bullying the weak and killing the most outstanding descendant of the six-eared macaque race. Seniors, you must seek justice for us. This place is too dark. After he shouted like this, everyone was dumbfounded. Especially the people from the Golden Body Battalion. Weren't they opposing each other with equal harshness just now? How did Mi Tian fall to the ground in the blink of an eye and spit out blood? Was he really injured or was he scamming? At this time, Xiao Yao and Peng Wanli also came back to their senses and shouted at the same time. Murder! The Blue Eyes, Golden Scales, and Scarlet Feather Beast clan's young lady killed someone in front of everyone. Relying on the strength of a second sage to kill the Golden Body Domain's Mi Tian, this is intolerable. The world is dangerous, and people's hearts are no longer what they used to be. A second sage slaughters the innocent indiscriminately. If this kind of villain is not executed, even the heavens will shed tears and the earth will weep. After hearing this, Chu Feng suddenly felt that the two of them had a tacit understanding. He wanted to give them a thumbs up, but he found that Monkey was staring at them with a murderous gaze. Because no matter what, Monkey was still a famous holy son, so how could he shout like this? He felt very embarrassed. Jean Lin's face was ugly. She had come to cripple Chowda and had deliberately provoked him again and again, wanting to anger that grumpy guy. She had even brought a group of second sages to help her. In the end, she found out that she had been scammed. Her two best friends were both stunned. Both of them were very beautiful, but now they seemed a bit silly and adorable. After a moment, they realized that Mi Tian was not really seriously injured and dying, but rather that it was all an act put on by those hateful bastards. The 8 second sages who walked out from the darkness felt their lungs ache. What was going on? They were waiting for Chowda to attack, but they were the first to be hit. In the distance, it was unknown how many evolvers in the Golden Body Domain had come out of their tents when they heard such shouts and swarmed over. These Golden Body cultivators who didn't know the truth were very surprised. They all thought that something big had happened and believed that the 6-eared macaque was seriously injured and dying. What was going on? The second sage on Jean Lin's side felt a headache coming on. They knew that they had been blackmailed. You guys are going too far. Jean Lin's maid said angrily with an ugly expression. She looked at Monkey who had fallen to the ground and couldn't get up. How could the dignified 6-eared macaque be so shameless? She directly rushed over and made a kicking gesture, wanting to force Monkey to get up. Mi Tian glared, his eyes flickering with golden light as he flew out more than 10 meters. Don't get up, just lie down. Chu Feng shouted in secret before shouting in front of everyone, do you see how arrogant young lady Jean Lin is? Even her maid dares to kick the 6-eared macaque's dying holy son. She's too arrogant. Damn, he's putting a big hat on me again. The group of second sages behind Jean Lin ground their teeth. They really wanted to carry him away and find a place where no one was around to bury him alive. They quickly stepped forward and pulled away the weasel woman. They couldn't get involved now. Mi Tian, you died so miserably. Seniors, are you all here? You have to take revenge for him. Peng Wanli shouted. The monkey glared. He was alive and well. If he jumped around in the future, what would others think of him? At this time, several old men appeared, including the old servant of the 6-eared macaque. Only then did Chu Feng and the others calm down. What's going on? Someone shouted. Chowda, Mi Tian, they tricked us. Jean Lin refused to suffer a loss and was the first to shout. She was the young lady of a powerful race, and whether it was the man she liked or her brother, they were all outstanding figures in the same realm. No one dared to provoke her. She was never willing to suffer losses, so how could she endure being extorted today? You almost killed me, Tian, yet you still dare to say that. It's clear how arrogant and overbearing you are normally. Facts speak louder than words. Mi Tian coughed up blood and fell to the ground, while you are safe and sound. Why don't we look at the image left behind in the clear heaven mirror? Chu Feng shouted as he pointed to the sky. There was a mirror hanging in the air. Then, the two sides began to wrangle and argue. Obviously, Chu Feng and Monkey had the absolute initiative. After all, Mi Tian was lying on the ground with blood dripping from the corner of his mouth. Moreover, everyone could prove that Jean Lin had taken the initiative to attack. Severely punish the culprit. cripple her cultivation, and make her compensate us with enough pollen and fruits. Xiao Yao shouted. In fact, this result was beyond his and Peng Wanli's expectations. If they could use this opportunity to blackmail the competitors on the list, it would be a good thing. With this happening, they would probably be able to kick Jean Lin off the list. Jean Lin's expression was cold as she argued, but Chu Feng refused to budge. He told the God Kings and Quasi-God Kings that Jean Lin had brought a group of second sages to provoke them and wanted to ambush them. During the argument, Monkey was secretly unhappy and asked Chu Feng why he pushed him out to blackmail and why he didn't go up himself. You are from the six-eared macaque race, so your identity is sensitive, Chu Feng replied. This made Monkey's mood slightly better. However, while Chu Feng was arguing with Jean Lin, he accidentally added, being knocked down to the ground with blood spurting out of my mouth and nose, how shameful. How could I be in such a sorry state? I'm invincible, so I'll have to trouble you. F***ck. Monkey's hair stood on end when he heard this. He jumped up with a whoosh and his eyes were spewing fire. He wanted to fight to the death with Chu Feng. That was because he had also thought about it. If the news spread among the aristocratic families that he had been beaten up by a woman, it would be too shameful. Even if the truth was restored, once people knew that he liked to blackmail people, he would also lose a lot of face. Everyone felt dizzy. Wasn't the six-eared macaque heavily injured and bleeding from his mouth? How did he suddenly have so much energy that he could fight someone? Why are you up? You have to consider the bigger picture. Chu Feng cried out. Monkey was so angry that he looked around for a metal rod and a suitable weapon. He wanted to smash him and fight him to the end. All of you, shut up. Behave. The elders couldn't bear to watch any longer. In the end, they decided to have Jean Lin compensate Mi Tian with an astonishingly valuable divine medicine for him to recover from his injuries. Regardless of whether Monkey was injured or not, Jean Lin had indeed attacked him. Otherwise, how could they appease the masses? At the same time, the elders sternly warned Chowda, Monkey, Peng Wanli, and the others not to stir up trouble. They hadn't been quiet recently. All of you better behave. How many times has old Hong's grandson been beaten by you? What kind of propriety is this? This is too outrageous. An elder shouted. Hong Yunhai's skin twitched. It was already shameful enough to mention his sore spot. Why were they still talking about this? After that, the elders sternly reprimanded those quasi-sages for provoking them for no reason. They had gone too far and punished them to reflect on the wall for 3 days. This naturally included Jean Lin, her best friend, and her maid. After all, they had attacked them. Let's celebrate! How delightful! Senior is wise. In just an instant, Chu Feng, Monkey, and Peng Wanli flattered and sang praises. They also expressed that they would abide by this punishment. The group of quasi-sages had ugly expressions. They were the ones being locked up, so Chowda, Monkey, and the others would naturally support this decision. They were so angry that the roots of their teeth were itching. They felt that this world was too dark. When they looked at Chu Feng, their eyes were filled with lust. Was this the brother upright in the rumors? Didn't they say that he would light a fire? He would explode with just a little provocation, but why did he send them all to the black prison in the end? The group of people were filled with resentment as they stared at Chu Feng. Their expressions became increasingly unfriendly. How shameless! How dare he try to blackmail us? They gritted their teeth. They had never seen such a shameless bastard. He could even do something like this. At this moment, Monkey gradually calmed down. The more he thought about it, the more unhappy he became. He really wanted to drag Chu Feng over and give him a good beating. That was because his heroic reputation had been used up this time. He felt that after this, all kinds of rumors about him would soon be flying around, especially among the aristocratic families. Rumors of him falling with a single touch, a professional blackmailer, would all fall on his head. These could be directly thought of. His face immediately darkened as he grabbed hold of Chu Feng. If he could beat him, he really wanted to do so on the spot. Chapter 1202. The group of quasi-saints saw Chu Feng and Monkey exchanging glances with each other, clearly communicating something in secret. They immediately felt rather displeased and wanted nothing more than to rush up and beat them up. In fact, Chu Feng was currently recommending a book written by a predecessor to Monkey, Self-Cultivation of Evolvers, telling him that his performance just now was too clumsy. He could obviously blackmail them to the end, but in the end, he had to jump up himself. His performance was too terrible. Monkey wanted to beat them up again, but he held back when he thought of Chu Feng's plot with them just now. This time, if they really wanted to play dirty tricks on the quasi-saints, they still had to count on Chowda, the main force. The group of quasi-saints was incomparably furious. They were warned by the Divine King that they had to report to the Black Prison within 2 days or they would be severely punished. This was also giving them some time to make their own arrangements. In the distance, Mi Qing was young and beautiful. She was rather speechless when she witnessed this scene. Her brother was really a little disgraceful. He actually blackmailed, and that Chu Feng was definitely the instigator. He was the one who urged her brother to do that. At her side was a graceful and aloof man. He frowned, speechlessly watching this scene. He was precisely Qi Lingkong, someone from the foreign wastelands Crane clan. He had a moment of doubt. Was this kind of collaborator reliable? They could even blackmail. It was really somewhat shameful and he couldn't bear to see it. At this moment, the few elders took a step forward and directly disappeared. Chowda, you're really something. The group of quasi-saints glared at Chu Feng with fire in their eyes. Blackmailed Monkey, you're really promising. Jean Lin mocked and personally gave Monkey a label. Monkey's face turned green after hearing this, and he immediately became anxious. If this were to spread, how would he still have any face? This nickname was too unpleasant to hear. Not allowing him to say more, Jean Lin said disdainfully, "Don't scratch your ears and cheeks, and don't come near me because I'm afraid that after you take the initiative to touch me, your 7 apertures will bleed and your whole body will crack. I can't afford to offend a blackmailed monkey like you." Really enough. Monkey was embarrassed and angry, but he really couldn't say anything. In reality, Jean Lin didn't say much to him. Instead, she walked over to Chu Feng, and the light in her eyes could kill. There were crackling sounds, and her eyes emitted sparks. She was extremely angry. She really wanted to make a move, but in the end, she could only hold it in. She secretly transmitted her voice, indicating for a group of quasi-saints to come over. They didn't need to make a move directly, but rather used their minds to suppress Chu Feng. This was an invisible force. Including Jean Lin, there were a total of 12 secondary saints surrounding Chu Feng. None of them made a move but were releasing their spiritual pressure to their heart's content. The outstanding figures among the 12 quasi-saints moved together like this. That kind of spiritual force was really astonishing. To an evolver at the Golden Arhat realm, it was an unbearable weight. If it were someone else, they would have already collapsed to the ground, unable to withstand this kind of suppression. Strictly speaking, these secondary saints had violated the precepts again and broken the rules. But now, Chu Feng was persevering and withstanding this kind of pressure. He didn't collapse onto the ground, so it was hard for outsiders to define it. Most importantly, everyone could see that Jean Lin and the others were deliberately looking for trouble, walking on the edge of the rules. Once Chowda really couldn't take it anymore, they would definitely retreat and stop suppressing him. Chowda, you've got guts. Everyone says you're upright, but from the looks of it now, you're just a scoundrel. How dare you trick us? Jean Lin spoke, her eyes cold as she stared at Chu Feng. Thinking of the experience not long ago where she was stabbed in the chest by this person, it really made her almost go berserk. She said disdainfully, "I'll give you a chance. Kowtow in front of everyone and apologize to me. Then we'll forget everything that happened between us." Now that they had joined forces to suppress Chu Feng to the point where he couldn't move, she directly raised this kind of rude request. Although her looks were outstanding, her current figure was slender with undulating curve. Her long golden hair was very dazzling, her skin was fair, and her eyes were very moving. But she made Chu Feng's pupils contract, and he wanted to launch an attack right away. She was actually forcing him like this. At this moment, the bones all over his body were emitting crisp sounds. If it were someone else, they reckoned that their entire body would have cracked under the suppression of the 12 quasi-saints and then exploded. Jean Lin, you guys are going overboard. I'm going to call for help. The expressions of the monkey and the others changed as they rapidly summoned those few elders. They were worried that Chu Feng would be crippled. Don't worry, we didn't attack. Jean Lin and the others also didn't dare to play with fire too much. Before they left, they joined forces in the end and used formless spiritual soul light resonance to give Chao De a taste of their strength. They even wanted to tear his soul light apart. However, they were very surprised because Chao De's spiritual energy was very powerful. Although it was fluctuating, it was extremely tenacious and didn't crack. Fine, you're not going to admit defeat today. You're going to fight to the death with me. Just wait and see. Jean Lin stretched out her hand. This time, she directly extended her index finger and pointed at the space between Chu Feng's brows. She had already come into contact with it and poked it again and again. She said, "You're just a wild cultivator. You'll understand your own inferiority and weakness very soon. I have plenty of ways to kill you. Just wait for your death." She turned around and left. Those people also left after her. At this moment, the monkey and the others called over the 2 elders, but they didn't stop them. Clearly, they felt that this matter should end here. After all, they didn't really start fighting, so it was fine to smooth things over. Chu Feng was furious as he stared at Jean Lin and the others. At the last moment just now, a total of more than 10 quasi-saints had joined forces and used their soul light to suppress him. They didn't let him budge, and he viewed this as a humiliation. He let out a loud roar that shook the Golden Body Battalion. Many people were shaken to the point that their blood and qi were churning, and they almost fainted. Chu Feng was about to chase after Jean Lin. The beam of light in his eyes was intimidating and extremely terrifying. The monkey, Peng Wanli, and Xiao Yao hugged him together and didn't let him chase after her. They advised him that it wasn't too late for a gentleman to take revenge even if it was overnight. In reality, there's no need for overnight. Didn't we already discuss it? We'll go and screw them over before the sun sets. They consoled him and promised to do something behind the scenes together when they got back. What a humiliation! I was actually threatened. Chu Feng said angrily. It's not humiliating at all. You single-handedly resisted the mental energy of 12 quasi-saints. This is enough to shock them. Didn't you see how uneasy they were when they left? They were worried about you in the future. You're already very strong now. Moreover, they're well-known figures among the quasi-saints. There are very few evolvers on the same level who can be a match for them. Under the monkey and Peng Wanli's persistent dragging, Chu Feng was taken away and brought to the monkey's cave dwelling in his tent for a secret discussion. At this moment, there was a wave of discussion in the Golden Body Battalion. What happened today was too astonishing. The Golden Bodies and the Quasi-Saints almost fought a great battle. That Chowda was too ferocious. Of course, the 3 words Pengzi monkey also became a keyword that people were talking about. If the monkey knew about this, he would definitely fly into a rage. No matter what, he indeed had an additional title that he didn't want to be tainted with from today onward. All right, let's do it when the sun sets today. I don't care about the others, but leave that Jean Lin to me, Chu Feng said as he walked around in the monkey's tent dwelling while carrying his mace. Don't be angry, the monkey said. I have a bad premonition. After today's Pengzi, I might never be able to wash away this stain. He was panting with anger and felt that he might become infamous together with Chowda. They had studied for a long time and confirmed that the targets of this ambush were 3 people. They would take action when the sun set today. As for how to lure the 3 quasi-saints to appear together, there was no need for Chu Feng to plan. The monkey and the others had already made all kinds of contingency plans and were just waiting to be carried out. During the process of the discussion, Qi Lingkong was a little unwilling. He kept feeling that he had boarded a pirate ship and that it was somewhat embarrassing for him to be together with these guys. That was because the plans and procedures they had discussed weren't very glorious. Mi Qing also spoke up and said, "I also feel it's a bit embarrassing. This time, we have to defeat them fair and square. Otherwise, it'll be very dishonorable. Don't you feel embarrassed to be on that list?" In her brother's plan, there were even devious moves like streaking. After all, there were women among the targets of the ambush. At that time, they would most likely be embarrassed and wouldn't dare to look straight at them. Other than that, there were other dark moves that were very devious. "Let's fight fair and square. We don't need these." Chu Feng waved his hand and said, "One must be magnanimous." The monkey said faintly, "Didn't you provide half of these dark moves?" "Nonsense. Don't ruin my reputation in front of our younger sister." Chu Feng wouldn't admit it no matter what. They began to move in secret. The monkey found someone to make arrangements because he had spies in the quasi-saint camp. "All right, before the sun sets, Jean Lin will walk out of the quasi-saint camp and go to another camp to find the Kuan dragon. We'll ambush her along the way." After the monkey received the feedback, he informed them that everything was going smoothly and they could prepare to take action. Other than that, there were 2 other experts who would go to another camp with Jean Lin for other reasons. They were all people on that list. The red sun set in the west and the sunset dyed half the sky red. 3 people walked over from the horizon in the distance. They walked out of the quasi-saint camp and headed in this direction. Under the bright red afterglow of the setting sun, their bodies were covered in a dark red luster. At the same time, there was also a faint golden glow. Their shadows on the ground were elongated. This was a stone forest. Chu Feng and the others had been hiding for a long time and were waiting to make a sneak attack. As expected, it was Jean Lin. She was wearing a long dress that flickered with starlight and was extremely stunning. Her golden hair was sparkling and translucent. Under the setting sun, her fair and exquisite face was exceptionally beautiful. "They're here. Don't fight with me," Chu Feng said secretly. After a while, those 3 people arrived at this place. Boom! Chu Feng erupted and was the first to make a sneak attack. He leaped up from behind a huge rock with his mace in hand and smashed it toward Jean Lin's head with all his strength. He was too fast as he moved while riding on lightning. Even Jean Lin couldn't dodge it. It was very sudden. Clang! Sparks flew in all directions with a deafening sound. The entire stone forest was shaking and terrifying energy spread out. The surrounding mountains and large boulders exploded under this energy ripple and turned into fine powder. Chu Feng felt his arm go numb. That mace actually produced sparks as if it had struck a metal body. Wasn't Jean Lin's head too hard? At this moment, Jean Lin was dizzy and her head was hurting. Tears almost flowed out. This attack had struck the pair of sparkling qilin horns hidden in her golden hair. It was so painful that she wanted to cry. She was a little dazed after suffering such a heavy blow. Chu Feng still hadn't realized that he had struck a qilin horn. As such, he said angrily, "It's harder than a wooden head. Is your head a lump of metal?" When Jean Lin saw that it was him, she immediately flew into a rage. Her snot and tears were about to come out. Her ears were ringing and she was seeing stars. She discovered that it was actually this damned bastard who had ambushed her and even said such words. "Kill!" The 2 erupted at the first moment and directly engaged in a decisive battle. However, Jean Lin had been ambushed first. She was still dizzy and her reaction was a little slow. Chu Feng swung out with a dragon leg and flew over horizontally. His legs spread open like a pair of scissors and cut toward Jean Lin. One of his legs was aimed at Jean Lin's face, while the other was aimed at Jean Lin's calf. Bang! Jean Lin resisted the violent impact. Chu Feng couldn't knock her over, but he took advantage of the situation to wrap around her body and lock her down with his legs. Chapter 1203. Chu Feng's scissor legs were extremely swift and fierce, but they were ineffective. In the end, he wrapped around her back, and his legs were like two iron chains that wrapped around Jean Lin's waist. This action happened in a life-and-death struggle. It seemed very ambiguous, but it was extremely dangerous. Jean Lin flew into a rage out of humiliation. She completely erupted and suddenly threw her head back. Between her golden hair, there was a pair of sparkling qilin horns that emitted terrifying energy. Throwing her head back like that was extremely terrifying. She was going to split Chu Feng in half. Chu Feng's pupils shrunk. He extended his hands, which seemed to be cast from gold, and without hesitation, he reached forward to grab the pair of sparkling, beautiful, yet terrifying qilin horns. Jean Lin was furious. How could her horns be grabbed by a man's hands? Especially when the posture between them was extremely inelegant. In such a setting, her entire body surged with light as qilin blood aura surged out. With a boom, Chu Feng couldn't grab the pair of horns because a terrifying scarlet light blossomed. On Jean Lin's back, a pair of blood-colored wings unfolded. Light overflowed and energy surged. The wings almost flipped Chu Feng over. At the crucial moment, Chu Feng crossed his arms in front of him to block, colliding with the scarlet wings. Vigorous energy and resplendent scarlet light burst out between them. Amidst the bangs, they fiercely collided. The pair of wings actually curled up and wrapped around Chu Feng. It was like an immortal clam in the sea opening a pair of sparkling clamshells to seal its prey and then refine it. This was the powerful ability of the mutated qilin race. The pair of wings were like an immortal clamshell. As they rapidly closed, they seemed to want to imprison Chu Feng inside and refine him into a pool of pus and blood. Chu Feng naturally resisted. His fists blasted forward like lightning, and his legs locked onto the other party's slender waist. He exerted all his strength, and his legs glowed like divine metal chains. He wanted to sever that delicate waist. Jean Lin was humiliated and angry. This kind of fighting posture was too excessive. Earlier, she was already gnashing her teeth at Chowda, and now she was ambushed. He actually locked her body like this, making her want to kill someone. At this moment, her long golden hair glowed resplendently, her skin was fair and glossy, and her beautiful face was covered in rage and killing intent. Her whole body erupted with light. She had long since used her quasi-sage divine ability to form a protective divine ring. She wanted to shake Chu Feng off and isolate him outside. However, Chu Feng was very firm and refused to let go. He fought in close combat, sticking close to his opponent. His legs seemed to have taken root, locking onto that slender waist, while his hands pulled on that pair of scarlet wings, wanting to tear them off. However, Jean Lin was too powerful. The scarlet wings became more and more resplendent, scarlet light overflowing into the heavens, wrapping around Chu Feng. There really was a chance of refining him into a pool of blood. At this moment, Chu Feng felt pain on his skin. The other party's divine ability was very terrifying. However, he wasn't willing to retreat. After all, he still had the upper hand and was locked onto his opponent. For a moment it was difficult for him to get off. The two were in a deadlock. Either Jean Lin would refine him into a puddle of blood, or he would tear off her wings and completely kill her. Not far away, the others had already made their move. The so-called ambush was launched at the same time. The monkey and his sister Mi Qing attacked one person together. At first, the effect was quite obvious. The siblings each had a large black gold rod, and all of them successfully smashed onto that person's body. The two rods were more than 10,000 caddies heavy and sent the person flying with blood spurting out of his mouth. This really made people speechless. It was fine if it was just the monkey, since he had a mouth of thunder to begin with. His eyes flickered with divine light, and his whole body was covered in golden beast fur. His physical body was tough and he had boundless strength. However, his sister Mi Qing's white clothes fluttered in the wind. She was elegant and otherworldly, and she also held a large black gold rod in her hand. She looked rather fierce. Her figure was excellent, and she was tall and graceful. She had bright eyes and white teeth, and she actually also held a large rod in her hand. She was using this kind of heavy weapon to fight against others. At this moment, although the opponent the siblings were ambushing had been smashed away by the two black gold rods, his bones and tendons weren't broken. That was because this was a special race known as the flowing light snail. Although he had transformed into a human form, the surface of his body was extremely tough and rough. There was a layer of protective shell around him. This was a special characteristic of his body, which was the shell of a snail. It was like there was a layer of coarse armor sticking closely to his body, protecting his life. Otherwise, just based on the joint attack of the six-eared macaque and his sister, even a peak quasi-sage expert would be smashed to pieces. "You guys are courting death," the flowing light snail roared. He didn't expect to be ambushed. He was truly very strong and his speed was too fast. He transformed into a bolt of lightning and took the initiative to meet the monkey siblings. Just like his name, although he was a snail, his speed wasn't slow at all. In truth, he was like a beam of flowing light, weaving in and out like lightning as he fought intensely with the monkey siblings. On the other side, Peng Wanli, Xiao Yao, and Qi Lingkong also attacked at the same time, ambushing their opponents. The target man looked tall and thin, and he looked a little weak. However, this wasn't the case when they actually fought. This young man blocked Peng Wanli's golden claw imprint and sealed Xiao Yao's Taoist fist imprint. Amidst the clanging sounds, sparks flew in all directions around his body, and the sound of his golden body trembling incessantly rang out. Peng Wanli's true form was a golden-winged roc. Now, he revealed a pair of golden claws, but he wasn't able to injure this person. He was blocked by a flying sword. This person came from the Yulan race, and was formed from a type of plant with extremely high spirituality. The leaves of his body were as hard as flying swords. He had cultivated a total of 8 special flying swords which blocked the sharp claws of the golden-winged roc at the crucial moment. At the same time, he also forced Xiao Yao and Qi Lingkong to retreat. The reaction of this expert from the Yulan race was astonishing. In front of him, 8 flying swords floated in the air. They were bright and resplendent, and their bodies were sparkling and translucent as if they could cut through the void. They emitted a terrifying radiance as their sword qi rushed into the heavens. At this time, the 8 flying swords moved. They revolved and slashed toward Peng Wanli's group. In a short period of time, an intense battle erupted. Not long after, some of Peng Wanli's golden feathers fell. He was already dyed in blood, and Xiao Yao was also injured. Qi Lingkong rushed toward the monkey siblings one moment, and then he came to help Peng Wanli's group the next. Because both places were very dangerous, the 5 of them joined hands to deal with those 2 experts. As for Chu Feng's side, he was the only one there because he had previously said that he wanted to deal with Jin Lin alone. He wanted to subdue her and make her his mount. Chu Feng used a secret technique. His fists shone and tens of thousands of streaks of lightning shot down. The densely packed lightning continuously blasted down, and all of them landed on that pair of blood-colored wings. In addition, his legs were also releasing electricity. He locked onto Jin Lin's waist and wanted to blast her into charcoal. His human king blood was reviving. Azure light flickered within his body and golden multicolored light surged, making his strength exceptionally powerful. At this moment, Chu Feng's attack was effective. It made the red and sparkling feathers flutter about. Some of them fell, and blood flowed out from Jin Lin's wings. Even if she was a quasi-saint, Even if she was a mutated Qilin race, her scarlet wings were also injured under this kind of terrifying attack. Chu Feng showed no mercy and went all out. He wanted nothing more than to tear off her pair of wings immediately. Jean Lin was extremely furious. Her entire body was surging with vigorous energy. She was extremely furious and humiliated. This person was like a dogskin plaster that stuck to her back. This was truly preposterous. Who was she? The young lady of the mutated Qilin race. This kind of entanglement was too ambiguous. At that moment, her entire body was shining. All kinds of symbols flowed on the surface of her body and converged into a ball of blinding runic flames. It was going to burn Chu Feng up. That was the flame formed after the mysterious markings in the Qilin's blood appeared. It was also called Qilin fire. From her bone marrow and cells, it kept on rushing out, wanting to refine Chu Feng. Chu Feng let out a strange cry. His whole body was in incomparable pain, and he felt as if his whole body was about to melt. However, he didn't relax. He locked his legs around her waist and moved his arms to strike a killing blow. Moreover, his forehead was shining. He wanted to kill the Qilin girl with soul light. Jean Lin's divine senses were incomparably sharp, and her senses were extraordinary. The pair of Qilin horns on her head shone and became more and more dazzling. They shot out 5-colored divine light, and the 2 dragon horns seemed like they could split the world. Astonishing multicolored energy surged out and surged towards Chu Feng. With a boom, frightening spirit energy burst forth in front of Chu Feng's forehead and above Jean Lin's head. The terrifying collision of soul light was as intense as a volcano erupting. It had to be said that Jean Lin was very powerful. She was ambushed first, locked at the waist, and carried on his back. After losing the initiative, she could still counterattack so fiercely. If it were someone else, they would have been killed dozens of times. Of course, if it were someone else, they wouldn't be able to fight her in close combat. At that moment, the monkeys suddenly cried out strangely. That was their secret signal. He was preparing to use a type of secret treasure. That was because the monkey and the others knew that after reaching the level of a quasi-saint, there were too many tricks that could be used. For example, there were all kinds of wondrous techniques and innate divine abilities, which were much more than what an evolver at the Golden Body Realm could grasp. Now, the monkey suddenly took out a picture scroll. Inside, there were towering mountains and silver waterfalls. The boundless land was incomparably majestic with surging rivers and a desolate aura covering the sky and earth. With a boom, this picture scroll enlarged and enveloped everyone. They disappeared from their original spots. This was the yin-yang mountain and river diagram. It formed a world of its own and trapped everyone. For a moment, all kinds of divine abilities and wondrous techniques were out of order. All they could use was their physical strength. Of course, the monkey didn't use the other great killing weapons passed down by their ancestors to kill them here. That was because it was meaningless. They had to perform and show that they were strong enough to fight a quasi-saint head-on instead of relying on forbidden weapons to destroy the enemy. This required them to be very outstanding themselves and be able to cross realms to fight with the top-notch figures among quasi-saints, or even defeat them. Only with such a performance could they be listed on that list. And this yin-yang mountain and river diagram was only used to lock everyone in, making it difficult for them to use their divine abilities and wondrous techniques effectively for a moment. They could only fight with their physical bodies, so it was relatively fair. Even if they were to argue and wrangle after the matter, they would also make their opponents have nothing to say. With a boom, the black gold rod in the monkey sibling's hands swept out and smashed toward the flowing light snail. On the other side, Qi Lingkong, Peng Wanli, and Xiao Yao were also using their physical strength to fight with the Yulan race's experts. Chapter 1204. On this side, some of Chu Feng's divine abilities couldn't be used anymore. He did everything he could to fight in close combat. His fist imprints were like rainbows, overflowing with golden light as they continuously bombarded Jean Lin. At this moment, Jean Lin also threw caution to the wind. She no longer cared about her graceful posture. She unfolded her scarlet wings and soared into the sky, continuously colliding in a suicidal manner. For example, in this fierce battle, scarlet light surged around her body. Her wings were like the sunset glow. With a slight flap, she flew backward toward a large mountain with a boom. Chu Feng let out a muffled groan. His back smashed into the rocky mountain formed from the yin-yang mountain and river diagram treasure, and blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. The activity of Jean Lin's cells increased rapidly. All the symbols in her blood appeared and resonated. The Qilin flames became increasingly resplendent as they burned her opponent. However, Chu Feng naturally wasn't a pushover either. He lay prone on her back and suddenly stretched out his hands through her scarlet wings. He wanted to lock onto Jean Lin's neck and strangle her elegant, snow-white neck. Jean Lin wouldn't give him this chance. She flew into a rage out of humiliation. She flipped in the air and smashed into the mountains formed from magical treasures. In the end, the two of them smashed into the ground together. With a rumble, they smashed into the rocky ground together. Smoke and dust soared into the sky as a huge crater appeared. This ground was really too hard. Even with Chu Feng's iron bones, golden body, and monarch blood boiling, he still found it a bit difficult to endure. The entire small world was formed from the mountain and river diagram treasure. It was truly tough. It was difficult for flesh and blood to gain an advantage when facing it head-on. Chu Feng's mouth and nose were bleeding. The most important thing was that his entire body was being burned by the Qilin flames. The pain was unbearable, and his clothes were even more so reduced to ashes. If not for the secret armor covering his vital areas, then he really would have to run around completely naked, just like the monkey's rotten idea. Even so, Jean Lin still let out a shriek. She felt that her eyes were burning. She was ashamed and resentful. This damned bastard! His arms and legs were completely bare. Moreover, he was still entangled with her like this. Jean Lin's tossing and turning became even more intense. She charged high into the sky and crashed into the mountains and the thick, rocky ground. Chu Feng let out a series of muffled groans. The two of them were engaged in a suicidal battle. Not only was Chu Feng suffering from such heavy injuries, but Jean Lin was also suffering. Sometimes, Chu Feng forcefully moved her body, and at the last moment, he used her to hit the mountain. Sometimes, he was like a comet streaking across the sky, crashing into the earth. Not long after, they were all covered in blood and their bones were cracked. In addition, Chu Feng tore off a portion of her blood-colored wings. The Qilin feathers fell, accompanied by a rain of blood and sparkling scarlet feathers that filled the sky. In addition, he locked Jean Lin's snow-white and exquisite neck and suddenly exerted force. His golden right hand shone with dazzling brilliance as he wanted to twist and break her swan-like neck. Jean Lin let out a muffled groan. Even someone as tough as a mutated Qilin would find it hard to endure a fatal chokehold at such a close distance. With a boom, golden scales appeared on part of her body. Moreover, they were rustling and trembling. As the scales opened and closed, they pricked Chu Feng's hand until it hurt. Blood flowed out from his fingers. Of course, there was also a terrifying wound on Jean Lin's neck from which her own blood dripped. Boom! Lightning erupted. After Chu Feng locked her in place, he did his best to activate the lightning. In the end, he discovered that some divine abilities and secret techniques were useless. They could only evaporate the blood that flowed out of his body. Boom! After Jean Lin transformed into a portion of the mutated Qilin's characteristics, her physical body became even more tyrannical. After all, she was a quasi-saint and was an entire realm higher. She was extremely terrifying. She had broken free from her predicament. This race was on par with the true dragons and was known as one of the races with the strongest physical bodies in the world. If it was an ordinary person, they would have long since been torn to shreds by her. She could easily crush them in a battle of physical strength. Chu Feng was already strong enough. Facing such a mutated Qilin, in addition to the fact that the other party was a top-notch expert among the quasi-saints and one of the few people who stood at the peak of that domain, Chu Feng being able to kill his way to this stage was enough to shock all the races and make the quasi-saints shudder with fear. Boom! Jean Lin didn't care about the torn parts of her scarlet wings and the flowing blood. She raised her head with all her might and rammed backwards. A pair of Qilin horns erupted. They were snow-white and sparkling. They were very beautiful but also extremely dangerous. Motherf *Ker, what's so great about having bone hyperplasia on your head? I'm invincible, cried Chu Feng. He used both hands to block and finally grabbed hold of this pair of Qilin horns. He pulled with all his might, wanting to break them off. Jean Lin was both shocked and furious. She didn't manage to ram into the other party, and instead had her sensitive Qilin horns caressed. This made her feel indescribably ashamed and resentful. Golden light surged from her body as she did her best to resist. The two fought a life and death battle. They fiercely resisted and were still entangled, but Jean Lin finally broke free from the shackles on Chu Feng's legs and regained her freedom. Moreover, in the end, it was even Jean Lin who turned the tables on him. Her slender arms strangled Chu Feng's neck in reverse. Meanwhile, her knees rammed fiercely into Chu Feng's chest and erupted with golden light. Golden scales appeared on her knees and clanging sounds rang out like fine blades slashing across. Blood dripped from Chu Feng's chest as he rammed his head into her lower abdomen. Jean Lin let out a muffled groan and fell back. She was temporarily separated from him while coughing up blood. At this stage, outsiders found it hard to believe that the elegant and noble young lady of the mutated Qilin race was actually entangled and fighting with someone like this. The main reason was because the monkey had used the yin-yang mountain river diagram to imprison divine abilities and secret arts. Kill! The two of them shouted softly and confronted each other again. Their fists were like rainbows and they were like lightning. Torrential energy surged as their scarlet wings flapped. They were practically about to snap the surrounding mountain peaks and send them flying. Jean Lin was incomparably furious. As a well-known figure among the quasi-saints, one of the top characters and a mutated Qilin race, she actually couldn't take down Chao Da. She was convinced that if it were any other quasi-saint, they would have long since been killed by Chao Da. She absolutely believed that this so-called Brother Gung was a swindler. He was clearly cunning and repulsive. He wasn't the kind of boorish fellow who would light up a fire. Monkey, you've miscalculated. This woman has a head of bronze and arms of steel. Her skin is so thick that even the wolf tooth club can't move her. Several wolf tooth spikes have broken when they hit her face, shouted Chu Feng. Jean Lin was so angry that her face turned pale after hearing this, and her eyes were spewing fire. This damned scoundrel actually said such things about her. How shameful and hateful! Rumble! She went all out and in the end, she began to wrestle with Chu Feng. The two of them rolled all over the mountainous region. One moment Chu Feng was riding on her and the next moment she was pressing Chu Feng to the ground. Her fists erupted like the sun exploding. It seemed ambiguous, but every strike caused blood to splatter. Chu Feng cursed his bad luck inwardly. He had originally wanted to agitate her so that she wouldn't be calm, but in the end, her fighting spirit erupted instead. Mount, submit! Shouted Chu Feng. He sat on her and blasted down punch after punch. It was rare for him to suppress Jean Lin for a short period of time, so he attacked with all his might. It didn't matter if it was her bright red lips, her sharp nose, or her beautiful eyes that were spewing fire. The golden fists directly smashed down. For a moment, Jean Lin's face was bruised and swollen. Blood flowed from her 7 apertures and cracks appeared on her bones. But very soon light flashed and she revealed her fresh and snow-white face again. Her Qilin blood was astonishing and her recovery ability was too strong. Boom! In the end, Chu Feng rammed his head into her forehead. This made Jean Lin's vision turn black and a slight crack appeared on her skull. She felt dizzy and almost fainted. Of course, after this attack, Chu Feng himself also felt the world spinning and he almost fell on top of her. So what if you're a Qilin? Is your skin so thick? If I become a quasi-sage, I'll be even tougher than you, he shouted. He grabbed Jean Lin's long golden hair that was like sunlight and slammed her into the ground with all his might, crashing into the huge rocks formed from the mountain and river diagram. Jean Lin was incomparably furious. What did he mean by thick skin? How was she like this? Of course, what made her the most angry and intolerable was that this bastard was riding on top of her and killing her. This made her go crazy. Boom. Finally, golden light flared up and the Qilin blood in her body surpassed its usual activity. She was activated beyond her normal state and flipped over Chu Feng, pressing him down. Then, the wings on her back spread out and she flew at top speed while holding Chu Feng close to the ground. She crashed into Mount Meru at the center of this small world. Boom! Mountain rocks flew everywhere and the earth quaked and mountains swayed. Chu Feng cursed. This fierce girl was too abnormal and made him spurt blood from his nose and mouth. He really couldn't endure this kind of collision. Are you streaking? He prodded her further. At this point in the battle, most of Jean Lin's clothes had disappeared. They had been turned to ashes by her Qilin flames. Only her chest and other important parts were covered by the delicate golden armor, preventing her from revealing too much. However, her slender legs and jade-like arms were all exposed. It was unavoidable that they would come into contact and tangle with Chu Feng while fighting and killing. Are you trying to seduce me? You really made my nose bleed. Do you eat papayas every day? Are you so broad-minded? Chu Feng had an extremely hateful appearance as he purposely mocked her, hoping to make her lose control. He would then find an opportunity to counterattack and suppress the mutated Qilin girl. Bastard, go to hell! Jean Lin said angrily. Her golden hair danced in the wind and a red rhombus imprint appeared between her brows, making her even more beautiful. Unfortunately, the imprint on her forehead couldn't shoot out divine light and couldn't use some shocking secret technique to kill the enemy. She felt that Chowda was too hateful and despicable. He was clearly the one who was bleeding from his nose and mouth, yet he was so shameless as to say that it was caused by seduction. Boom! Chu Feng finally took advantage of her intense emotional fluctuations to flip over. After a fierce attack, he wrapped his arms around her snow-white neck and twisted it with all his might in an attempt to kill her. I'm regretting it, the monkey shouted in the distance. He was indeed regretting it. The two siblings had also encountered great trouble. They thought that this so-called flowing light snail should have a very soft body apart from its shell. If they found an opportunity, they could directly kill it. In the end, the flowing light snail roared in a low and muffled voice, "Damned monkey, do you really think my body is so easy to bully? I'm a mutated silver-colored flowing light snail. My body is the strongest. Haha, monkey, you've been tricked." He was naturally incomparably valiant and surpassed the other quasi-sages by a large margin. Even the disciples of the top-notch orthodoxies couldn't hope to catch up to him. Otherwise, it would have been difficult for him to make it onto that list. Monkeys, go to hell. His body was in pain from being beaten by the two black metal rods. That was why he was so angry and bellowed. Everyone's divine abilities and secret techniques couldn't be used at this moment. They could only fight with their bodies. It had to be said that this flowing light snail was too terrifying. Apart from its hard shell, its body was actually very rough and tough. It was suffused with white light as if it was cast from silver. In addition, the antennae on its head weren't ordinary snail antennae. Instead, it was a pair of real coarse horns. At this moment, the monkey let out a strange cry and his face turned green. He had the urge to curse out loud. Am I fighting a snail, or a primordial bull demon king with a turtle shell on its back? Damn it! The monkey was infuriated. He felt that he had miscalculated and had shot himself in the foot. At this moment, his entire body was covered in blood and injuries. The thunder god's mouth had been beaten crooked by the demonic bull, and the corners of his eyes were tattered and bleeding. Mi Qing was also badly injured. Her white robes were stained with blood and her hair was disheveled. Her beautiful face had turned purple and was even stained with blood. However, her eyes were filled with unswerving determination. "Monkey, don't be anxious. Don't panic. Watch me subdue the strongest mount in history. I'll go and support you guys immediately," Chu Feng shouted from afar. "Damn, Chowda, you're fighting with your butt naked. How shameless! You're really going to run around naked?" The monkey cried out and then said indignantly, "I'm really unlucky to have encountered a crude and perverted snail. I wanted to run around naked, but I couldn't even use my beauty trick. Get out of my sight." Chu Feng was furious. How was he running around naked? There was still a portion of his sturdy armor that hadn't been broken. In other words, his upper body was bare. Of course, he and Jean Lin were indeed revealing large amounts of skin. "Mount, surrender!" Chu Feng roared. No matter what, he first encouraged himself mentally. After suppressing his opponent, he went all out and locked down Jean Lin, who was in a state of disheveled clothing and revealing large areas of her snow-white skin. "Are you convinced?" he shouted. Jean Lin was furious. She hadn't even been defeated yet this fellow was so shameless. He actually wanted her to lower her head. Was this really a spiritual victory method? How preposterous! Of course, she felt that this fellow was indeed shameless and extremely disgraceful. This time, he actually head-butted her chest, causing her body to tremble violently. She almost fell to the ground amidst the intense pain. Go to hell! Chapter 1205. Amidst the shouting, the two of them attacked at the same time. Dazzling energy splendor appeared on their bodies, forming protective divine rings. They were like two resplendent suns rising up, and then they suddenly collided. This time, the two of them felt their vision darken. This was a collision of physical bodies, a competition of essence, energy, and spirit. The two of them let out muffled groans, both bleeding from their 7 apertures as they staggered back. Their bodies swayed, and they almost fell to the ground several times. But in the end, the two of them charged at each other again with bloodshot eyes. Jean Lin screamed, wishing she could immediately tear apart this man who was disrespectful to her and was entangled with her. Her head of golden hair danced chaotically, and her snow-white skin shone. Her voice was sharp, causing many rocks in the surroundings to explode. In the end, her voice became a bit low and even more terrifying. It was like thunder, causing the nearby cliffs to crack, and large areas of the cliffs exploded. This was truly a terrifying shockwave. Rumble! When she approached Chu Feng, something even more terrifying happened. Her entire body was golden, and her figure became larger. She was covered in a layer of densely packed scales as if she was cast from gold. Jean Lin's form completely changed. She revealed her true form, becoming a golden qilin. Her entire body was covered in fine golden scales, and rays of light overflowed. She was like an ancestral qilin beast that walked out from prehistoric legends. She was a variant. Her dark green eyes shone, and there was a pair of blood-colored wings on both sides of her body. They erupted with scarlet multicolored light, and radiance overflowed into the heavens. In the legends, the qilin great ancestor had fought in a certain prehistoric forbidden land, fighting until several provinces had sunk in. He had killed too many people, and thus mutated, growing blood wings that represented endless slaughter. Roar! Such a loud roar shook Chu Feng to the point of dizziness. One had to bear in mind that the surrounding cliffs were all exploding. All the rocks floated up, and then they rapidly turned into fine powder. One could well imagine how astonishing and terrifying the power of this roar was. Normally speaking, an ordinary golden Arhat-level cultivator's body would collapse, and they would die miserably on the spot. Chu Feng staggered, but he was scared inwardly. After this woman rushed forward, she suddenly revealed her true form, and such a barbaric attack was unavoidable. Who didn't know that the Qilin race's fleshly body was the strongest under the heavens? Only a few races could compare with them. The sparkling horns on the Qilin's head were snow-white like jade, but they also flickered with cold light. Those dark green eyes were incomparably cold, carrying endless killing intent. Meanwhile, golden scales swirled with brilliance, as if golden flames were burning. Her 4 legs were taut, trampling the ground as she angrily rushed over. All of this gave off an unparalleled sense of oppression. Bang! Chu Feng couldn't dodge, so he used his ultimate fist. His entire body shone with golden light, like a golden sun that was about to explode. In addition, there was a faint layer of bloody light on the surface of his body. This was the profound meaning of this fist. Apart from being extremely powerful, it could also draw in the blood of all living creatures. Rumble! In an instant, the golden blood within Chu Feng's body was also activated. It was accompanied by a portion of the azure color, but under the cover of the ultimate fist's golden light, it wasn't all that special. This was the toughest clash between the two. With a boom, Chu Feng felt intense pain in his chest as 2 bloody holes appeared. The main reason was that the other party's Qilin horn was too hard, and there was no way to evade at such a close distance. He was almost lifted up by the Qilin horn, but his own fist imprint had also struck out and blasted the Qilin's forehead. It was a powerful and decisive attack. Golden scales flew out, accompanied by the sound of bones cracking, and Qilin blood splattered in all directions. Chu Feng and Jin Lin both let out muffled groans. They were both sent flying by the terrifying impact and fell to the ground, finding it somewhat difficult to get up. "You're actually a monster," Chu Feng provoked her. But now, he felt that his speech was unclear. The main reason was that he was dizzy from the impact and his vision was blurry. In addition, there were 2 bloody holes in his chest that injured his internal organs and caused blood to surge. Although he had closed the wounds immediately and used lightning to evaporate the blood, he frowned even more because 2 of his sternum had been broken. Jin Lin's Qilin horn was the hardest part of her body. Moreover, she was a quasi-saint, so she had given him a terrifying attack. However, Jin Lin's condition was also very bad. Her frontal bone had split open, and Chu Feng's ultimate fist had almost pierced through it. If that happened, the Qilin would die. They charged at each other again, but Chu Feng had evaded her horns. He was at a disadvantage in the golden body domain if he fought head-on in such a barbaric manner. Jin Lin's body swayed. After being struck in the frontal bone, the impact on her was too great. Even now, her vision was still black and she was seeing stars. She didn't even hear Chu Feng's words of provocation. Huh! Chu Feng was astonished. Although his sternum was broken and his chest had been pierced through with 2 terrifying bloody holes, this kind of injury was worth it. In exchange, the other party was temporarily stunned. Boom! He rushed over and landed several more punches on the Qilin's head with great strength. As a result, the mutated Qilin went berserk and chased after him with scarlet eyes. With a boom, a mountain wall was smashed open and a short hill exploded. One had to know that this was the Yin-Yang mountain river diagram, and the mountains were all formed from magic treasures. Whoosh! Chu Feng rushed over and grabbed the Qilin's tail. Then, he began to swing it violently. This caused the somewhat muddle-headed Jin Lin to wake up slightly, but she was still dizzy. She shook her head violently. "Ah!" She immediately screamed. Someone had actually lifted her tail and swung it violently. This kind of attitude, this kind of behavior, made her too ashamed and resentful. Boom! After Chu Feng swung her up, he fiercely smashed her into a stone mountain. Immediately the earth shook and the mountains shook. Rocks tumbled, golden scales danced in the air, and blood splattered in all directions. At the same time there was a bang. Chu Feng suffered a heavy blow. Jean Lin's hind leg stomped down, causing him to let out a muffled groan and spit out large mouthfuls of blood as he was sent flying. This wasn't a light blow. He felt as if his internal organs had almost been coughed out from his mouth. Of course, Jean Lin's injuries were even more serious. Her body violently collided with the magic treasure mountain. Her entire body was in pain, and one of her snow-white horns was damaged. Her head was covered in blood. "Ah!" she screamed. However, before she could stand up, Chu Feng rushed over again and once again grabbed her golden qilin tail. He swung it again and smashed it outwards. This time, Chu Feng was especially cautious, fearing that he would suffer another hoof. Jean Lin was driven mad. She discovered that her body's reactions had become sluggish, mainly because she had been struck. Her head was dizzy, and after her frontal bone was cracked by Chu Feng, the effects on her were too great. The sharpness of her divine senses had dropped sharply. Otherwise, how could the other party have grabbed her qilin tail again and swung her around? In the distance, the monkey was stunned. Then, he was extremely envious. That Chowda's battle accomplishments were too glorious. He had actually swung Jean Lin around and smashed her. On the other hand, the two siblings were too unlucky. How could they have encountered a snail? It was simply a peerless bull demon. Moreover, it was a strengthened version with a protective shell. It was like a dead tortoise that couldn't be moved even when hit. This made the monkey gnash his teeth in hatred. This time, he had truly miscalculated. At this time, the monkey was covered in blood. There were several bloody holes on his body, all of which had been pierced by the flowing light snail's horn. He continuously cursed. It was supposed to be a horn, but after this snail had mutated, it had turned into a thick horn. It made him howl in anguish as he was struck several times. There was a bloody hole on his left buttocks. "Damn your grandpa! What flowing light snail! Your father must have been cuckolded. You should be the descendant of a barbaric bull. Moo, I'll beat you to death." The flowing light snail's nose was spewing flames. The monkey's little sister, Mi Qing, was also covered in blood. One of her arms had drooped down and couldn't move anymore. She could only hold a large stick with one hand. "Chow, come over and help. Can't you see that my little sister is covered in blood?" the monkey shouted. In truth, he himself couldn't bear it. His little sister's injuries were a bit lighter than his. With a crack, Mi Qing reconnected her dislocated arm. However, it was true that two of her ribs were broken. "Get out of the way!" shouted Chu Feng. He grabbed Jean Lin's golden tail and ran over. Not bad. Divine power. Holding a qilin upside down. Amazing! The monkey cried out in envy. Chowda had passed this battle. Whether he won or lost, this kind of achievement was enough to stun a large number of people. On the other hand, he was beaten black and blue. Some of his bones were broken, and there were several bloody holes in his body. Of course, it was also because he took the initiative to act as a meat shield. He couldn't let his little sister be pierced by that thick horn, right? It was he who blocked in front of her several times. Boom! Chu Feng rushed over. He raised the golden qilin and smashed it at the flowing light snail, using it as a weapon. At this time, the flowing light snail's eyes were red from killing, and it was almost going berserk. That was because once it was like a raging bull, its blood would burn and it would enter a state of madness. Its reaction was slightly slower and couldn't dodge in time. It was smashed by the qilin's body and immediately let out a muffled groan. He spat out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying. Other than his bull's roar, the monkey was also crying out miserably. He didn't dodge in time. When Chu Feng smashed Jean Lin over, his tail couldn't avoid it in time and was caught between the flowing light snail and the golden qilin. At this moment, the monkey jumped 13 times on the spot and then jumped in circles. His tail was badly mutilated, and he was in so much pain that he gritted his teeth and tears were about to flow out. "F***CK. You really hit your own people when you're crazy?" shouted the monkey. He was so angry that smoke was coming out of his 7 orifices. He couldn't stand the pain. Half of his tail was about to break. It was too painful. Meeching hurried over and helped him treat the wound. I already said to get out of the way. Didn't you hear me? Quick, get out of the way again, shouted Chu Feng. He swung Jin Lin, who was dizzy and had blacked out from being smashed again and again, rushed up and fought fiercely with the flowing light snail. The monkey had a lingering fear and quickly jumped away. Clang! Sparks flew everywhere. The Qilin's body smashed into the flowing light snail's body. Even his tough shell couldn't take it. Gotcha! This was especially true when Chu Feng attacked continuously. There was one time when Jin Lin's Qilin horn collided with the flowing light snail. His shell was penetrated and blood flowed out. The flowing light snail was also dodging, but Chu Feng was like a crazy demon. He activated his human monarch blood and attacked crazily while Jin Lin was dizzy. After activating his human monarch body, his speed was raised to the limit. Even the flowing light snail couldn't take this barbaric attack. His physical body couldn't compare to the Qilin race. Many bloody holes appeared on his body and his shell had collapsed. I'll fight, I'll fight, I'll fight. The monkey shouted and rushed forward with his black gold rod. Together with his sister, they attacked the flowing light snail and blocked his path of retreat. After fighting 3 against 1, the situation reversed. The flowing light snail cried out miserably and was covered in blood. Most importantly, his protective shell had been smashed and his horn was finally smashed by the monkey siblings with their black gold rods. Jin Lin shook her head to clear her mind. After sensing the current situation, her vision went dark and she almost fainted again. Her position was too embarrassing and she wanted nothing more than to smash herself to death. The flowing light snail was defeated and couldn't hold on for much longer. Over here, we also need reinforcements, Peng Wanli shouted. His body was covered in blood and he looked miserable. Who knew how many feathers he had lost? Are you guys okay? Chu Feng asked the monkey. What do you think? The monkey said gloomily. He was incomparably resentful. He didn't even dare to swing his tail for fear of breaking it. We're fine here, Mi Qing said. Right now they had beaten the flowing light snail to the point of collapse. His body was covered in blood and mucus. He couldn't retaliate at all. Chu Feng carried Jin Lin and rushed to another part of the battlefield. Chapter 1206. Hold on, I'm coming, shouted Chu Feng. This place was a bit far from the other battlefield. At this point, the 3 battlefields had all been separated. At this time, Peng Wanli, Xiao Yao, and Qi Lingkong were in a miserable state. They were covered in blood and on the verge of collapse. At this time, Peng Wanli had transformed into his true form. The feathers on his body had withered, and his originally golden body had been dyed red. Moreover, there were parts of his body that were almost completely bare. If this continued, he wouldn't look like a Pring anymore. He would look more like a fallen chicken. The main reason was because the opponent had exceeded their expectations. His body was unimaginably tough. They had been tricked by a monkey. From what they knew, the Yulan race was a plant and would be very weak after transforming into a human. As long as one could tear off its key parts, such as its main stem, it would lose its combat strength. However, the reality made them flabbergasted. This was a green gold Yulan. It was originally from the Yulan race, but it had been born at the edge of a rare metal mine. During its growth, it had absorbed large amounts of divine metal essence, causing its body to become incomparably powerful. Although it was still a plant, it had the powerful divine metal attribute. Its body was almost indestructible. That was why Peng Wanli and the others were in a miserable state. They had originally wanted to rely on their physical bodies to kill this plant-type opponent, but they had never expected to be suppressed instead. They had encountered a quasi-sage monster with an extremely powerful body. Peng Wanli was a true Peng race member. His true form was enough to blast through the earth. His golden feathers were surging with energy, illuminating the entire sky. Regardless of whether it was the pair of wings or the golden claws, they could all tear apart a mountaintop. His attack power was extremely powerful, but when it landed on the emerald gold orchid's body, it only produced clanging sounds. Sparks flew everywhere, and the sound of metal rang out incessantly. He couldn't do anything to the green gold Yulan. On the contrary, its true form, which was glowing with a green light, slashed at his body. There were also sparkling and resplendent flying swords that almost cut off his head several times. These flying swords and blades were part of the green gold Yulan's body. They were formed from its roots and leaves. As for Xiao Yao, his hair was disheveled, his chest, arms, and other parts of his body had wounds that were so deep that bones could be seen. One of his arms had almost been chopped off and was dripping with blood. He did his best to unleash the Tao race's fist imprint to its limit. However, he was still somewhat helpless against a green-gold body monster that was separated by a major realm. Qi Lingkong was also in an extremely miserable state. Blood flowed out from one of his wings, almost separating from his body. That was a terrifying laceration. He was a strange, desolate crane that didn't have feathers, entire body covered in scarlet scales. His body was originally sturdy, flesh incomparably powerful, but many of the scales on his body had fallen off, so it was difficult for him to effectively injure the other party. His crane-form fist was like a crane's beak. Although it pierced through the opponent's body, the metallic luster flickered, and the green-gold orchid recovered. "Monkey, you're a heavenly pit!" Peng Wanli roared in anger. This time, every member of Monkey's group was very unique. The teammates they found were all known for their powerful bodies. Regardless of whether it was the six-eared macaque, Peng race, Tao race, or the scarlet-scaled strange desolate crane, they were all the embodiment of peerlessly powerful bodies. As for Chu Feng, there was even less of a need to talk about him. He had previously seized Monkey's wolf-tooth club, killing him until he was fleeing in all directions. That was why Monkey had formulated this kind of strategy, using the yin-yang mountain river diagram to lock down this world, restricting the display of divine abilities. In their research, apart from Jin Lin, if the flowing light snail abandoned its shell, its flesh would be extremely weak. Meanwhile, the Yulan race's body was even softer. As long as it was pierced through, it would be fatal. But who would have expected that they would directly step on a mine? That flowing light snail was like a bull demon, its physical body powerful to a freakish degree. Meanwhile, this Yulan race expert had absorbed large amounts of green gold essence. He was simply ridiculously powerful. That was why in the end, they kicked an iron plate and fell into a huge pit. It was incomparably miserable. If it wasn't for Chu Feng going crazy at the last moment, they reckoned they would have suffered a tragedy and would have been tricked to death by Monkey. Ao! The golden-winged Peng flapped its wings. Hundreds and thousands of feathers turned into densely packed arrows. Golden light overflowed into the sky as they swooped down to kill the quasi-sage of the green-gold Yulan race. This was also the main reason why his body was almost bald and about to become a stray chicken. He had no choice but to do this in order to resist the powerful enemy. Dang, dang, dang. The green-gold Yulan's entire body shone. All kinds of long blades and flying swords revolved around its body, sending many golden pink feathers flying or cutting them apart. At the same time, its body was very hard. After being hit by the arrows, it only caved in and didn't penetrate through. Qi Lingkong let out a long cry. He was also in his original form as he swooped down from the sky. The crane's beak shone as it pierced down like a spear. However, 6 or 7 leaves appeared beside the green-gold Yulan and combined together to form a giant green-gold shield. Then, it suddenly smashed into the sky. Qi Lingkong let out a mournful cry. Even though he had evaded in time, part of his body was still struck. His red scales fell off and his entire body was covered in blood. Even some of his bones were fractured. Dang. On the other side, the spear in Xiao Yao's right hand had been cut apart. The fist imprint on his left hand had dimmed and his finger bones were fractured. "This little grandpa is coming. Hand over your life, you lush green fellow." Chu Feng carried Jin Lin and crossed over 100 meters with each step. He finally arrived with the golden qilin in hand and directly smashed forward. He was using brute force to defeat everything. It was simple and violent. He lifted up the mutated qilin that was as large as a small mountain and directly smashed it. Other weapons were useless. Blades, swords, and spears would all be cut apart by the green gold yuan. Only such a tyrannical weapon with the power of Mount Tai could pose a certain threat to the green gold yuan. As expected, his expression changed and he quickly evaded. With a boom, Chu Feng smashed Jin Lin into the ground. This caused the young miss of the qilin race to let out a muffled groan. Her vision darkened and her consciousness became increasingly blurry. Jin Lin was too miserable in this battle. After losing the initiative, one wrong step after another led to her being captured and becoming someone else's weapon. Chi. The green flying knife rushed over with great speed and almost slashed at Chu Feng's neck. It wanted to behead him. Fortunately, he reacted quickly. He opened his mouth and spat out a beam of white light formed from essence energy. It immediately knocked the flying knife away. Then, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled around him. Although his divine abilities and secret arts were restricted, it was still possible to bluff people. He mainly used his domain methods in secret. This stretch of mountains and rivers was formed from magical treasures. Some areas didn't lack magnetic materials, especially this place where there was a profound magnet mountain. Now it was being used by Chu Feng. "Even your head is oily green. Come over and accept your death," shouted Chu Feng. He rushed forward once again with the golden qilin in hand. This time, the other party was ruthless. He directly activated the leaves, roots, and all kinds of long knives, flying swords, and spears. All of them erupted with brilliance and flew over with quasi-sage level fluctuations. Rumble! The whole stretch of mountains and rivers was trembling. That was Chu Feng borrowing the power of geomagnetism. All kinds of profound magnet rays interweaved like lightning. "Watch my thunderous fist. I'm the master of heavenly tribulation. I control the world's punishments and judge criminals," shouted Chu Feng. He used the lightning fist as a cover, and then there was a riot. All kinds of lightning danced about and profound magnet arcs interweaved. Perhaps it didn't affect living things too much. But at this moment, those metal weapons, long knives, and flying swords were all sucked in. Chu Feng used the brilliant profound magnet rays to collect them amidst tinkling sounds. Of course, in the eyes of outsiders, this was done with lightning. "Lord De is here to ask the world, who can fight against me? Who can fight against me?" shouted Chu Feng. He was showing off there, but he didn't stop. His speed was too fast. He rushed over with Jin Lin in hand and smashed the emerald orchid. Smoke and dust filled the air, and the sounds were loud. The emerald orchid's heart trembled. Many of its roots, stems, and leaves had turned into flying swords and long knives. They left its body and were sucked in by the profound magnet. This caused its strength to drop. Its speed had also slowed down, and its physical body wasn't as strong because it lacked the defense of those stems and leaves. As a result, after Chu Feng rushed over, it became somewhat passive. It charged left and right, and its body was smashed several times. Its entire body was deformed like metal. In the end, it coughed up large mouthfuls of green blood accompanied by metal fragments. Its spirit was dispirited and listless. This caused Peng Wanli and the others to be dumbfounded. This Chowda was too freakish. He had subdued the most powerful and troublesome enemy just by charging over? When they heard his cocky words just now, their mouths twitched, waiting to see him make a fool of himself. In the end, he really swept through this great enemy. "Lord De is here, who dares fight against me?" Chu Feng continued to shout. "Let's go as well. Otherwise, if we let him suppress the emerald orchid alone, Who knows how cocky that fellow will be? Shouted Peng wanly. Makes sense. Then, the three of them charged over together. Io, what the F*** CK? Chow, who are you hitting? My bones are broken. The three of them cried out, roaring angrily. They were all sent flying, their bodies in incomparable pain. That was because after Chowda raised the golden qilin, he didn't recognize anyone. He accidentally sent the golden-winged Great Peng flying, causing half his body to be in intense pain. His initial estimation was that 2 more bones were broken. It was the same for Xiao Yao, who was sent flying. The most miserable was Qi Lingkong. As soon as he charged over, he encountered the same problem as the monkey. He was sandwiched between the qilin weapon in Chu Feng's hands and the emerald orchid. One of his wings was badly mutilated, unable to flap at all. He staggered backwards. Sorry, why did you guys suddenly charge in? Why did you take the initiative to charge into my attack range? Chu Feng asked guiltily. Chow, you really are crazy. You're even hitting your own people. Why were you? I'm going to die from anger. The three of them were so angry that their noses were crooked. They had been fighting with the emerald orchid until now, but in the end, when Chowda arrived, he directly smashed all of their bones, smashing them to the ground. Blood sprayed out from their mouths and noses. It was truly preposterous. Boom. Dang. The final moment arrived. Chu Feng carried Jin Lin and smashed the emerald orchid onto the ground. It continuously spat out metal fragments, green blood covering the ground. It couldn't hold on anymore. Stop, I concede. The emerald orchid surrendered and took the initiative to admit defeat. He was afraid that he would be beaten to death. Tie him up. Chu Feng personally tied him and Jin Lin up firmly with the spirit-binding cord. On the other side of the battlefield, the 6-eared macaque siblings had finally finished their battle. They had severely injured the flowing light snail, causing it to fall unconscious on the ground. Then, the 2 of them also fell stiffly there, not wanting to move. In the end, it was still Chu Feng who tied up the flowing light snail and threw the 3 quasi-saints together. He sat on the golden qilin and looked at the other people who had fallen in disorder. He was the only one who hadn't fallen while sitting on the captive that was as tall as a small mountain. At this moment, countless people had already gathered in the outside world of this area. There were a large number of golden Arhat-level evolvers, and there were also many quasi-saint. They actually used the yin-yang mountain river diagram. Is this a decisive battle or an ambush? Someone was astonished. I just received news that someone saw the 6-eared macaque, Chowda, and the others coming over here. Jin Lin and the others also passed by here. It's most likely that there was a conflict between the 2 sides. Why did it have to be like this? Is there a need to guess? It's probably the 6-eared macaque, Chowda, and the others. They want to get on that list and issue the final challenge to the quasi-saints. However, I reckon that they will fail and even die. At the very least, that Chowda will most likely be killed. After all, he had already angered Jin Lin and the others. Golden Arhats challenging the best of the quasi-saints. They're courting death. There was a lot of discussion among the people as they looked at the mountain river diagram that was floating in midair and radiating brilliance. At this moment, a few divine kings who were in charge of managing this area appeared. They decided to break this diagram and release the people inside. They were really afraid that the golden Arhats would be crippled and killed. I hope that Chowda, 6-eared macaque, and the others can stay alive. An old man sighed. The 6-eared macaque and the others must have been severely injured, but they should be fine. Given the families behind them, Jin Lin and the others won't go so far as to kill them. Only that Chowda most likely won't survive. Even the divine kings didn't think that it was possible for the golden Arhats to challenge the quasi-saints to complete such a difficult task. That's good too. This can also be considered a lesson for them, lest they overestimate themselves. Chapter 1207. Monkey, are you trying to cheat us? This damnable mountain and river diagram is just giving aid to our enemies and restricting us. Pengwanli laid on the ground, unable to move. His entire body was bare, and he had no image left at all. Normally, his golden feathers would be resplendent and he would float in the air like a resplendent sun. But now, his body was covered in blood and he didn't have many feathers left. If they added some fire, they could directly turn him into a roast duck. On the other side, Xiao Yao was the same. His bones were broken and he lay there, not wanting to move at all. As for Monkey, he directly laid on the ground with his but facing upwards because his tail was smashed into a bloody mess by Chu Feng and was almost broken into 3 pieces. Even now, he was still groaning and gritting his teeth. How would I know that their trump card is related to their physical bodies? Damn, I sent people to investigate very clearly and almost used the honey trap, but I actually didn't manage to find out such a secret. Monkey flew into a rage out of humiliation. This time around, his mistake had almost caused a group of people to perish here. One could imagine that, if they were really captured by Jean Lin and the others, they would most probably have a layer of skin peeled off. Given Jean Lin's personality, how would she let them off so easily? Aya, it hurts so much. Sister, do you have any more medicine? Monkey shouted. He felt that his tail was about to break. Naturally, he shouted like this to change the topic. After all, there was a huge problem with the strategy he came up with. Chowda, damn you! I'm the Monkey King. If I lose my tail, let me tell you, I'll fight you to the death. Monkey shouted. Upon speaking of this, Pengwanli also became agitated. Several of his bones had been broken by Chowda. He was really too beastly, so crude and barbaric that it made people's hair stand on end. Chow, you really even beat up your own people? The rumors outside weren't wrong. You pervert! Xiao Yao cursed. Qi Lingkong rolled his eyes and glared at Chu Feng. He was also infuriated. After all, one of his wings was smashed until it was dripping with blood. White bones could be seen everywhere. He himself felt dizzy just looking at it. The few of them complained, saying that they were all beaten up by Chowda and that the injuries they suffered were even more serious than those caused by their enemies. Chu Feng had a guilty conscience. He first expressed his apologies, but in the end he said stubbornly, "Who said I beat all of you? At the very least, little sister Miqing didn't. I didn't touch her." Chow, you are really selective. You did it on purpose, didn't you? Pengwanli was even more dissatisfied. It was unfair. He was already in such a miserable state, but he was still beaten up by Chowda. He was truly filled with anger. As for Monkey, he bared his teeth. The god of thunder's mouth flashed with a cold light. With a gloomy face, he warned, "Chowda, I'm telling you, you're not allowed to have any ideas about my sister now. I gave you a chance earlier, but you missed it. I have a good relationship with little sister Miqing, so it's none of your business," Chu Feng said, not the slightest bit afraid of him. When the monkey heard this, he gritted his teeth and had a faint look in his eyes. He had never seen such an arrogant person. He wanted to woo his sister? He actually dared to say such words to his face. He was too despicable and too shameful. No matter what, even if the other party succeeded in his pursuit, he was still an existence like his brother-in-law. Pengwanli, Xiao Yao, and Qi Lingkong were all speechless. How arrogant! This Chowda was truly fierce, saying such words to the monkey's face and provoking him like this. Was this really good? Miqing smiled sweetly. Even though she had the same mother as the monkey, they were completely different. She was born with a human body, youthful and beautiful. This was a bloodline inheritance. The 6-eared macaque bloodline had always been like this for so many years. There were 2 forms, and she belonged to the human race. Right now, even though her white clothes were dyed in blood, she still gave off an exceptional feeling. Her large eyes were clear, beautiful, and otherworldly. However, she was also heavily injured. She fell to the ground and didn't have any strength left. Chu Feng hurriedly jumped off the golden qilin. He was extremely enthusiastic and directly went to support Miqing. As a result, the god of thunder opened his mouth wide and roared continuously, trying to intimidate and threaten him. In the end, Chu Feng didn't pay him any attention. He arrogantly ignored this brother-in-law level existence and continued to walk forward. At the crucial moment, it was still Miqing who took care of her brother's emotions. She tactfully declined Chu Feng, saying that she was fine. "Monkey, when will this mountain river diagram be unsealed on its own?" Xiao Yao asked. "I reckon it will be soon," the monkey said. In reality, as soon as he finished speaking, a loud rumbling sound rang out. The entire mountain river diagram became dim. Then, it quickly shrunk and turned into a picture scroll. It no longer covered this place, and instead floated into the air. It flowed with divine splendor and floated there, releasing dazzling radiance. In the outside world, everyone stared at the scene. They wanted to know how many people died and what the final result of the battle was. In everyone's eyes, those in the golden body domain had definitely been defeated, and they were in miserable states. Chowda's death was probably the most miserable. It was hard to say if he could even leave behind an intact corpse. At this moment, light overflowed. The mountain river diagram turned into a picture scroll, shining like a sun. It still hadn't restrained the last bit of terrifying energy. That was why no one could see the scene below clearly. Chowda can also be considered outstanding. Recently, he rose up rapidly and swept through the battlefield, beating up the golden body cultivators of the other camp until they fled at the mere sight of him. It would be too much of a pity if he died here. If he doesn't die now, he won't live for long in the future. Think about it, he offended Jin Lin, which is equivalent to offending the number 1 expert in the saint domain. The Kuan Long is known as the number 1 saint. Jin Lin's brother is ranked 3rd among the divine level experts. The mutated qilin is unstoppable and too powerful. Meanwhile, do you think there'll be a good ending after provoking his younger sister? Everyone was discussing. They all believed that Chu Feng should have been killed. Perhaps this was also a type of early release for him. Only the pupils of the divine kings and quasi-divine kings rapidly contracted. They didn't fear the dazzling mountain river diagram in the sky. They immediately discovered the true situation. Their faces all twitched endlessly. Then the others also shut up. It was because the mountain river diagram restrained its brilliance and was no longer resplendent and dazzling. There were people lying on the ground in disorder. The 6-eared macaque, the golden-winged roc, Xiao Yao of the Dao race, and Qi Lingkong of the exotic desolate crane were all heavily injured. They lay there, unable to budge. Only Chowda's eyes were still glistening with vigor. He was full of vigor and even looked like he had excess energy. Everyone was dumbfounded. Who was he sitting on? That's heavens! The group of people was shaken. The quasi-sage flowing light snail's hard-shelled man was smashed to pieces. He fell to the ground and couldn't budge like a corpse. Around the quasi-sage green-gold orchid, there were broken metal leaves and roots all over the ground. He was also like a zombie with blood dripping from his mouth and nose. His eyes were lifeless and he couldn't move at all. Moreover, both of them were tied up. The most important thing was that the young lady of the mutated qilin race, Jin Lin, had revealed her true form. Her body was as large as a small mountain, but it was elegant and beautiful. She was tied up firmly and that person was sitting cross-legged on her. Chowda! Heavens, what happened? This Chowda is sitting on Jin Lin's body and tying her up. What's going on? The group of people was in an uproar. This was completely different from what they had imagined. Even the faces of the few divine kings and quasi-divine kings were twitching. Even they had predicted wrongly earlier. Not only was Chowda unharmed, but he was also full of vigor and had become the only person radiating vitality. Hong Yunhai's expression suddenly changed. He really wanted to berate him, but he held it in. Now wasn't the time for him to stick his head out. Chowda, what's going on? A large number of evolvers had come here. Half of them were golden arhats, and the other half were from the quasi-sage camp. Now, those quasi-sages were all shaken and inexplicably palpitated. Some of them asked with a trembling voice. They simply didn't dare to believe their eyes. What's going on here? Nothing much. These are all my captives. I've released all of them, Chu Feng replied calmly. After that, he pointed with his finger. Not only were the 3 quasi-sages within the boundary he had drawn, but he had also accidentally crossed the boundary and included Monkey and the others. Damn you! Peng Wanli shouted angrily. Monkey's face also turned green. This shameless guy was too shameless. He was exaggerating his battle achievements. Everyone was speechless. How valiant was this battle achievement? The people on the ground were all top-notch experts of various realms, but in the end, they were all defeated by him. At this moment, Jean Lin faintly woke up and immediately felt that something was wrong. She panicked when she saw many people in the vicinity staring dumbfoundedly. She rapidly transformed into a human form and became a woman of exceptional beauty. In reality, the mutated Qilin race had always taken human form for generations. After going through bloodline evolution, in this life, the human form was instead their main body, while the Qilin form was more like a conjured body. They were only willing to use the Qilin form when the battle was at its most intense. Therefore, she preferred the human form more. Now that she saw so many people here, she transformed at once. However, she didn't understand the situation. There was still a person sitting cross-legged on the gigantic Qilin. Chapter 1208. Jean Lin was tall and her skin was fair and translucent. She had long legs and a slender waist, and her curves were undulating. Her long golden hair danced in the wind, and her beautiful face was filled with fury. Chowda! Jean Lin screamed, feeling incomparably humiliated. She had actually been captured and tied up as a captive. The most important thing was that Chowda, who made her eyes spew fire, was actually sitting on her body. This was intolerable. She resisted fiercely and wanted to struggle free. After the golden Qilin transformed into human form, it naturally shrank rapidly. Chu Feng followed suit and directly suppressed her when he saw that she wanted to struggle free. Boom! Chu Feng's entire body shone and his appearance was solemn. He was still sitting cross-legged like a holy monk, his body blossoming with divine light. A divine ring appeared and enveloped his body like a heavenly monument pressing down. With a bang, Jean Lin let out a muffled groan. Being suppressed by this kind of power caused her body to feel incomparable pain and her bones were about to break. She was bound by the spirit-binding cord and wouldn't loosen as her body shrank. On the contrary, the more she struggled, the tighter it became. After the golden Qilin shrank into human form, Chu Feng smashed down from mid-air and used terrifying energy to sit directly on her spine. At this moment, Jean Lin's curves were undulating. She only had a layer of golden inner armor to protect her slender waist. In the end, her waist was almost broken and she almost fainted. Bastard! She was both furious and humiliated. There were so many people in the vicinity, and there was no lack of people she was familiar with. More than half of them were quasi-saints. It was truly shameful for her to be suppressed like this under the watchful eyes of so many people. Many people were dumbfounded and speechless. This was the young miss of the mutated Qilin race, yet she had been beaten up so miserably? She was outstanding and beautiful. She was a well-known figure among quasi-saints, yet she had actually been captured. The heavens are benevolent. Demoness, why haven't you surrendered yet? Chu Feng wore a solemn expression and then slapped the Qilin's head. Everyone was stunned. Who would dare to target the young miss of the mutated Qilin race like this? Not to mention others, just her brother, who was ranked third among the divine-level characters, would go all out and tear the offender apart. Actually, Chu Feng really wanted to pick up his mace and give her a good beating. How dare you challenge me after being captured alive? But when he considered that a few godly kings and quasi-godly kings not far away were staring at his every move, he still played his part. "Oh my God, am I seeing things today? What did I just see?" Someone broke the silence. Also, at this time, the war reporters who heard the news appeared, holding all kinds of filming equipment, making clicking sounds as they captured the scene. Chu Feng stood up, picked up Jean Lin, and was about to throw her to the side without a care in the world. He wanted her to be placed side by side with the flowing light snail and the emerald orchid, becoming a prisoner. "Hello, Mr. Chow. I'm a reporter from Tai newspaper, which has the largest circulation in the world of the living. May I ask if it was really you who defeated the 3 quasi-sages and a few golden-body geniuses? Also, I would like to ask Miss Jean Lin, what do you think of Mr. Chow?" A few people rushed forward. Some were in charge of interviewing, and some were in charge of taking pictures. They had excited expressions on their faces because this was definitely explosive news to them. Chu Feng discovered that after this reporter asked him a simple question, he went to pay attention to Jean Lin and asked them to express their opinions. He felt that this was deliberately creating an intense emotional confrontation to ignite the topic. Therefore, he didn't want to pay attention to them. Jean Lin was so angry that her whole body was trembling. Her snow-white body was tense, and her hair was standing on end. She couldn't restrain her anger. How embarrassing was it to be tied up and thrown to the ground as a prisoner? She was even photographed and interviewed. It would definitely cause a huge uproar when the newspaper was published tomorrow. At this moment, the red sun was setting in the west, leaving only a portion of the sunset glow. Meanwhile, Jean Lin was so agitated that her whole body was trembling. She was angry and worried, and her face was as red as blood. At this time, some people rushed in and shouted, "Our Tonggu newspaper is the #1 seller in the world of the living. Mr. Chow, we would like to interview you." "Hello, Mr. Chow. I'm a reporter from Heaven Morning Post." The war reporters from all the major newspapers and periodicals rushed over, each more excited than the last. Their eyes were all green and shining. This was definitely explosive news. They were all taking pictures and surrounding Chu Feng and the prisoners on the ground. "Mr. Mi Tian, may I ask how you got injured? Go away, can't you see that I'm lying here and don't dare to move? I'm warning you, if you break my tail, I'll exterminate your 3 clans." The monkey bared his teeth and shouted. He was truly furious. Being surrounded by so many people was too terrible. Were they treating him as a monkey? "Pah," he spat. That was really the case. Chu Feng immediately scolded and warned the reporters. "He's injured, don't crowd around. Didn't you hear what he said? One of his tails was broken, and if it affects the bloodline inheritance in the future, you'll have to take full responsibility. The 6-eared macaque clan won't forgive you." "What? A broken tail will affect the bloodline inheritance? Could it be an injury similar to castration?" It had to be said that this group of reporters had rich imaginations and immediately became excited. When the monkey heard this, his face turned green and then purple. In the end, even his eyes were no longer flickering with golden light. Instead, they were emitting black light. He shouted, "Let's see who dares to make such a report. Also, Chow, you dare to trick me." The 6-eared macaque's temper exploded. He shouted, telling the reporters to scram. Then, the sound of chattering filled the air. The group of reporters took pictures from all directions, recording this historical moment. They didn't care about these things. "May I ask if you're Mr. Peng Wanli? Why are your golden feathers gone?" Someone had set their eyes on the golden-winged Great Peng, which made him go crazy. He was now completely naked. He originally wanted to pretend to be dead and then run away, but in the end, he was also targeted. "Scram, I'm the young master of the Golden Falcon race. Look carefully," Peng Wanli shouted. "Mr. Peng, don't speak nonsense. I'm from the Falcon race and my eyes are the sharpest. I can tell at a glance that you're a golden-winged Great Peng and a pure-blooded one at that. Walking together with the six-eared macaque, who else could it be other than Mr. Pring Wanley? You're slandering me and ruining my honor. I'm clearly a golden falcon. What's so great about the great Pring race? Pring Wanley's face turned purple. He really didn't want to be photographed like this. Xiao Yao and Qi Lingkong were naturally not let off. They were also surrounded. As for Jean Lin, the flowing light snail, and the green-gold orchid, they were the most affected areas. War reporters swarmed over, causing the place to boil over. Very soon, a number of quasi-divine kings and divine kings took action. They seized all the recording equipment in their hands and tore apart their recording devices. They weren't allowed to leak them out. As for the network blockade, there was no need to do so. This place was once a forbidden zone with all kinds of domain interference. The signal wasn't smooth. The war had been going on for so long, but those airships and ships didn't dare to land rashly because many mysterious crashes had occurred. All of you disperse. Don't speak carelessly, the divine kings said with sunken faces. They warned the war reporters not to report carelessly because the six-eared macaque race, Dao race, Qilin race, and Pring race were all vicious fellows. No one could protect them if something happened. The group of reporters couldn't accept this. This was big news, but in the end, all kinds of equipment had been confiscated. They were full of pent-up anger. However, they also felt restraining fear. If they really reported this wantonly, they might really disappear without a trace on this battlefield. In any case, the Golden Body and Quasi-Sage camps were all stirred up that day. This battle exceeded everyone's imaginations. The Golden Body could defeat a Quasi-Sage? This truly shocked many people. One had to know that the Flowing Light Snail and Jean Lin weren't ordinary Quasi-Sages. They were well-known figures among them with tyrannical strength. Not many people could match them. They occupied the terrain and sealed off the space. They could only fight with their physical bodies. Chowda and the monkey won through crafty schemes. Someone said, "Forget it. A loss is a loss. What's going on with that Chowda? One look and you can tell he's a top-notch expert. He killed a quasi-sage ape god on the battlefield before." This triggered a heated discussion in the two camps. Chowda naturally attracted everyone's attention. Some people said that he had most likely come to strengthen his family. However, this rumor was quickly refuted. There were only so many powerful clans in the Yang realm, and it was confirmed that he wasn't their disciple. At the same time, news about other people was flying all over the place. I heard that the six-eared macaque was castrated during the decisive battle. If we don't find the great medicine as soon as possible, we'll be in big trouble. When the monkey heard this news, he flew into a rage and his lungs were about to explode. Then, he let out a blood-curdling scream because his tail was bleeding again from the violent shock. It's reported that Jean Lin is very miserable. She was beaten until her battle clothes were torn and she was running around naked. Moreover, that Chowda used her as a praying mat and sat on her. She suffered a great loss this time. Nonsense. Don't blaspheme the pure and holy fairy in my heart. How are you talking nonsense? This is true. Many people saw it. Moreover, it's rumored that Chowda is extremely daring. He wanted to take Jean Lin as his mount from the very beginning. There'll be a lot to see in the future. The outside world was in an uproar. The Golden Body camp and the Quasi-Sage camp were in great discussion. Meanwhile, the few people involved were recuperating. Even Chu Feng was grimacing in pain as he set his bones. He wasn't completely unscathed. His chest had been pierced by Jean Lin's Qilin horn and 2 of his bones were broken, but the problem wasn't very serious. At this moment, they didn't return to their own camp. Instead, they were placed under house arrest by a few divine kings to wait for the outcome of this matter. Of course, Jean Lin and Chu Feng's group were separated and not in the same cave residence. Otherwise, they would definitely start fighting. That was because even the monkey wanted to fight with Chu Feng. He really couldn't hold himself back and stain his illustrious reputation. While they were recuperating, all kinds of undercurrents were surging outside and becoming more and more intense. Regardless of whether it was the 6 Ears race, the Rock race, or the Tao race, they all took action. They competed with the mutated Chilan race and the flowing light snail race, seizing the qualifications to enter that name list. If they really entered that name list, no matter how bad the descendants of the race were, they would still be able to become celestial venerables in the future. With just a little bit of luck and opportunity, they would become almighty. This kind of great opportunity was related to the rise and fall of this race, so the benefits involved were too great. Otherwise, why would the monkey and the others refuse to accept it? To challenge the quasi-sage was to change their own fate. Now they had already done everything they could do. Now it was up to the elders of the race how to operate. For a moment, the situation outside was rather complicated. Those old fellows were confronting each other in secret, discussing in secret, compromising with each other, and also carrying out a dangerous slaughter. At the very least, some people saw that in the depths of a mountain range far away from the three-way battlefield, an old golden monkey had appeared. After playing chess with an old man and drinking tea, they actually engaged in a fierce battle on the spot. That mountain range exploded and turned into fine powder. They sank into the darkness and fought in outer space. Blood dripped down and burned in the air, as if the flames of the 9 heavens were about to destroy the world. It was clearly a question of the ownership of the fortunes among the younger generation, but in the end it caused some old fellows to make a move. One could well imagine how much importance they attached to it. So much so that night, when Chu Feng encountered a death tribulation, someone snorted coldly. Spiritual energy spread out and turned into a heavenly blade. It was 300 meters long and wanted to eliminate Chu Feng. At this moment, Chu Feng felt as if he had fallen into an icehouse. That person was too powerful. He almost hid in the stone jar and used the heavenly escape talisman that old Gu had given him to escape. Of course, the reincarnation soil and the black wooden spear were also prepared and ready to be used at any time. At the crucial moment, a large golden hairy hand appeared and crushed that heavenly blade, causing the cave in the tent to fall apart. Then, those irregular scenes all disappeared. That night, an archaic expert that was like a living fossil appeared in the camp. He warned all clans that they couldn't bring their personal grudges into the camp, and that there would be no exceptions. Otherwise, no matter how powerful one's clan was, if anyone dared to break the rules, they would be killed without exception. They would ask Harmony Province's overlord to personally take action and eliminate them. It was because it was one thing for the younger generation to compete, but if a few old fellows were allowed to act recklessly, this place would be finished. No matter how many heroic talents there wouldn't be enough to kill. Moreover, even if there were conflicts between the younger generation, they couldn't use their strength to bully the weak. They couldn't break the rules that had long been established on the battlefield. You want to kill me? Chu Feng's eyes were deep as he said to himself, "This matter isn't over. I'll settle things with you all in the future." While the atmosphere in the camp was stifling, the game outside was becoming more and more intense. The 6-eared macaque race, Tao race, Peng race and others were naturally fighting for their own children. They wanted to replace him and enter that list. Meanwhile, the variant Chilan race and others were strictly opposed. They said that the monkey and the others had broken the rules and had to pay the price. The strong go up and the weak go down. This is the most bloody and realistic rule. Our disciples are stronger, so why should they be suppressed by your connections and not be allowed to obtain a portion of the Tao-melting grass? Chapter 1209. The consensus was a process of mutual compromise. The initial agreement was to allow the Golden Body Evolvers to be on the list and give them a chance. But this was clearly a trap. It didn't say who would be given the right, but only within the broad scope of the Golden Body realm. The news leaked out immediately, and the other races became excited. Some people wanted to participate and get a share of the loot. After all, this concerned their race's future with another celestial or even a powerhouse. After the monkey heard the news, he was so angry that his whole body was trembling. They wanted to pick the fruits of labor midway and take a share of the fortune from them? How preposterous! He was furious. Some races wanted to share equally and fight for opportunities for the younger generation disciples of the Golden Body realm in their own race. They were very active in the discussion. Peng Wanli, Xiao Yao, and Mi Qing's faces were ashen. There was a flame throbbing in their chests. This made them feel indignant and extremely vile. They were fighting with their lives on the line, but in the end, someone else came to take advantage of them. What logic was this? Of course, they knew that this was the doing of the challenged races like the mutated Qilin race. Even if they relaxed and allowed the Golden Body evolvers to ascend the mountain, they were still creating trouble. Regardless of whether it was the six-eared macaque race, the Dao race, or the rock race, they naturally wouldn't agree. Some of the old fellows almost flipped the table in the end. You want to pick the fruits of labor midway? Come and ask us first. Let's fight and see if you guys are qualified, the monkey shouted. He was so angry that his face was ashen as he paced back and forth in the tent. At the same time, he kept on gnashing his teeth. He was so agitated that his tail couldn't help but swing about. In the end, a chunk of it almost fell off, causing him to scream miserably as blood seeped out of his tail. Chowda, aren't you angry? Pick up your mace and let's go and settle the score with them. I don't believe that we can't defeat them even if we can defeat the quasi-sage. The monkey said angrily. He wanted to fight his way to their doorstep and teach them a lesson. However, Chu Feng could tell that although the monkey was angry, he wasn't so confident that he could sweep through the other party. It seemed that there were still some ruthless fellows. There were Golden Body evolvers who could challenge the monkey and the others? Peng Wanli explained. The few of them were revered in the eastern camp area, and there were a few people in the western area who weren't weak either. Those demons could contend with them. The Golden Body Battalion was very large. According to the serial numbers, there were more than 10 battalions, and according to the location, there were 4 major regions. Among them, Monkey and the others were the strongest, and they were usually wary of one another. Chu Feng said, with your elders stepping forward, do you think they will let you suffer? You've said it yourself. The old fellows in the clan are black-hearted and ruthless. I reckon that they're even more unhappy than you are. They'll definitely stand up for you. The monkey's anger subsided slightly. He also knew that the old fellow in the clan had an even more violent temper than him when he was young. It was impossible for him to swallow this resentment. Chu Feng had a good impression of the six-eared macaque, and he had a good impression of it. After all, there was a powerful master who wanted to kill him not long ago, but a big hairy hand appeared in the dark and scared the person away. He guessed that it was an old monkey. That day, the game became more and more intense. Outside the 3 battlefields, there were experts confronting each other in the sky. There were glaring flames burning, terrifying lightning interweaving. One could vaguely see several elders' figures disappear with a flash. Then, the heavenly dome exploded. What kind of terrifying energy was this? It made people's hearts palpitate even from a great distance away. Many people fell limply to the ground. Other than that, there were also Golden Body evolvers who came to challenge the monkey, Peng Wanli, and the others. They were very polite, but they were also very resolute. They wanted to determine a victor. The monkey gritted his teeth. When he found out who had come to challenge him, it was actually the famous ferocious bird, 9-headed bird. He had brought a few sworn brothers with him. In the end, Mi Qing appeared and told them that if they wanted to challenge her brother and the others, they had to defeat the 3 quasi-saints first. Otherwise, they wouldn't be qualified. Hee, Sister Mi Qing, long time no see. You've really become more and more ethereal, youthful, and beautiful. I can't help but feel pity for you. After 9-headed bird transformed into human form, He was handsome and handsome. He wore a gentle smile and looked harmless. Nine-headed bird was known as a great omen in prehistory. It was said that his ancestor came from the 11th forbidden ground in the Yang realm. There was also a 12-winged silver dragon beside him. It was a branch of the dragon race's bloodline. It was shaped like a big lizard and had silver flesh wings. It had dense scales and was extremely powerful. In particular, he actually had 12 wings. He was revered as a heavenly emissary, or in short, an angel. Moreover, he was a battle type. Pure-blooded 12-winged silver dragons were rare since ancient times. This was a fierce stubble that wasn't the slightest bit weaker than nine-headed bird. Nine-headed, 12-winged, let's not be so hypocritical. If you want to be qualified to enter that list, you have to defeat the 3 quasi-saints first and then come here to fight with us. Otherwise, forgive me for not accompanying you. My brother and the others are all injured, so I'm not in the mood to talk to you. Mi Qing was very calm, but her words were very straightforward. She directly refused and wouldn't accept this kind of challenge. On what basis could she accept it? This was intercepting them midway, wanting to reap the fruits of their labor. How could she agree? Although Mi Qing was elegant and otherworldly, she was also angry now. These people really had no bottom line. They really had the nerve to open their mouths? Are your brother and the others badly injured? But we heard that this battle was mainly fought by Chowda, and Mi Tian and the others reaped the fruits of others' labor. How could they still injure themselves? Nine-headed bird smiled gently. After saying these words, he didn't linger and directly left with the others. In the big tent, Monkey, Peng Wanli, and Xiao Yao were so angry that their faces were ashen. They wanted nothing more than to kill their way out and suppress Nine-headed bird and the 12-winged silver dragon. The other party's provocation was too excessive. Don't be angry. They're trying to sow discord between you and Chowda. I have a feeling that they don't want to deal with us. Their target is Chowda, Mi Qing said in a low voice. At this time, Chu Feng was recuperating in his cave residence and hadn't come over. After Monkey and the others heard this, their eyes flickered. Although they were angry, they weren't ordinary people. They had keenly sensed something. They all had the confidence and the support of their clans. Ordinary people wouldn't dare to touch them. Even if they wanted to snatch food from the tiger's mouth and snatch 1 or 2 spots on the list, they would have to pay a bloody price. Any clan that wanted to stop them would have to think twice. Not long after, someone arrived in the secondary sage camp. Kun Long, known as the number 1 saint, arrived with a green demon saber on his back. At the same time, Jin Lin's brother, known as the 3rd strongest god, Jin Lai, also stepped into the camp. His killing intent surged as he called for Chowda. Needless to say, these two had come for Jin Lin and wanted to cause trouble for Chu Feng. Although Harmony Province's camp didn't allow the strong to bully the weak, these two had still come. Moreover, they were followed by a large group of people. They wanted Chu Feng to go out and meet them. At the crucial moment, the old servant of the 6-eared macaque tribe, an old god king, stopped them and persuaded them to leave, telling them not to cause trouble. A storm was brewing. Everyone could no longer sit still. Their killing intent soared as they became restless. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.